Hey everyone, welcome to FanFic Canon. Thanks for hitting play. I'm thrilled to bring this fan-made story to life for you. If you enjoy the ride and want more narrated fanfics, smash, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want audiobook of a novel of your choice, join my Patreon. Request any title that's freely available online, and I'll produce a full narration just for you. Now, let's dive into today's adventure.
The glowing blue text cut sharply through the darkness of the sewer. The black dog lying on the ground stared up with trembling golden eyes, completely stunned. Almost no one besides the marauders knew the name of his animagus form. Yet the blonde wizard standing before him had spoken it without hesitation. And that rat, if Sirius was right, the wizard had identified Peter Pettigrew. Alive. Murderous rage surged into Sirius's eyes. But how does he know I'm hunting that rat? You should rest for now. This isn't the best place to talk. As Sirius began to relax slightly, Luwin cast a stunning spell. They were deep in the sewers now, where the stench was thick and suffocating. There was no chance he'd hold a proper conversation in a place like this. He cleaned the unconscious black dog with a flick of his wand. Mud vanished, stains disappeared, even the dried blood at the corners of its mouth faded away. Then he opened his Camui's face and tossed Sirius inside as the swirling vortex swallowed him. Moments later, Luwin stepped out into Diagon Alley. It was 1 a.m. Inside a Collie's potion shop, he laid the sleeping dog onto a wooden board, then headed to the basement to fetch a vial of sobering potion he'd brewed the previous year. Pouring the potion into Sirius's mouth, Luwin settled into the sofa to wait. 3 minutes passed before the golden animal eyes blinked open in confusion. Warm lamplight filled the room and delicate wind chimes rang softly nearby. It was the warmest place Sirius had seen since Azkaban. But the moment he spotted Luwin, he tensed, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Luwin sighed and lazily wrote in the air with his wand. Sirius Black? The dog hesitated, mind still foggy. Then his shape began to shift. Moments later, a gaunt, ragged man stood there instead. If you mean the fugitive from Azkaban, yes. That's me, Sirius rasped, his eyes sharp and dangerous. Where did you learn about that rat? You mean Peter Pettigrew? The floating letters rearranged themselves. Sirius's fists tightened, rage burning in his gaze. That cowardly rat. But confusion soon joined the anger. How did this wizard know about the marauders? About his escape? About Peter? And where were those eerie scarlet eyes he'd seen in the sewer? Now, the wizard's gaze was a calm pale blue. Had Sirius imagined it? No. He remembered that ominous stare. Cold. Venomous. Like Medusa's. Luwin tossed him a newspaper and wrote again. Marauder's map. Sirius scanned the page. A photograph of the Weasley family at the pyramids. And on his shoulder, a rat. No wonder. He exhaled slowly. So that's how you knew. He sat across from Luwin like a man who had seen too much to be surprised anymore. What do you want from me? Luwin smiled. Pale blue eyes gleamed. I'll help you catch the rat. You help me with some work? Sirius scoffed. I don't need help killing Pettigrew. You plan to kill him? I want to tear him apart, Sirius growled without hesitation. And then what? Luwin wrote. Go back to Azkaban? Leave your godson to Snape's mercy? Sirius froze. Luwin pressed on. I can help restore your name. Harry can call you godfather again. All you need to do is side with me. Silence fell. You don't want Harry growing up thinking you murdered his parents. The words landed like blades. Sirius's breathing went shallow. Pain flickered in his eyes. At last he spoke. I agree. Luwin smiled faintly. Exactly as planned. Luwin watched Sirius lower his head and let out a soft laugh. Trust me. I can restore the honor you deserve. Then another line appeared in the air. Do you want something to eat? Sirius paused, then nodded. Ever since escaping Azkaban, he had swum across the sea, crept through alleys, avoided patrols, and survived on nothing but filthy sewer rats. He had almost no strength left. Luwin swept aside the papers cluttering the table and brought out several dishes from the kitchen. Steak, pumpkin pie, rock cakes, honey muffins, all made by him. The moment the plates hit the table, Sirius didn't bother with manners. He grabbed a fork and devoured everything in front of him. The taste alone made his eyes half close in relief. Lu-En sat across from him, calmly sipping black tea with a biography open in his lap. While eating, Sirius took in the room. Shelves of potion bottles lined the walls. This was clearly a potion shop. And potion shops belonged in Diagon Alley. So, he was already back in London. He slowed his chewing slightly. Did this wizard apparate all the way from Surrey? He studied the young blonde man. He looked barely 20. Sirius wiped the grease from his mouth with a ragged sleeve. Can you at least tell me your name? Blue letters formed in the air. Lu-En Gerald. Gerald. A Muggle-born name. Sirius glanced toward the robe hanging nearby. Green-trimmed. Slytherin. You're in Slytherin? A Muggle-born? In that nest of snakes. His voice was full of disbelief. He came from a pure-blood Slytherin family. He knew exactly how ruthless they were. A Muggle-born being sorted there was nearly unthinkable. More letters appeared. Third year Slytherin. Sirius spat his tea everywhere. You're in third year. He stared at Lu-En like he was seeing a ghost. So young. So calm. So powerful. Was this really a 13-year-old? Lu-En snapped his fingers and cleaned the spilled tea without a word. Sirius shook his head. If you hadn't said anything, I would have sworn you'd already graduated. He slumped comfortably onto the sofa. So, what do you want me to do? The new text appeared plainly. Control Nocturnally. Sirius nearly dropped his wand. What? Had he read that right? Nocturne Alley had existed for centuries. Even the darkest wizards hadn't truly controlled it. And now this third-year Hogwarts student wanted to? It sounded insane. Lu-En continued calmly. You don't need to worry about how. Someone else will handle it. You just follow me. Silence followed. Lu-En returned to his book. Sirius simply stared at him, unsure where to begin. Finally, he asked, Are you mute? Lu-En looked up and tapped his cheek. Animagus training. Understanding dawned. He was deliberately avoiding speech to keep from losing control of the transformation process. Sirius nodded. That was fair. Then another thought crossed his mind. You mentioned Snape earlier. His tone sharpened. Did he do something to Harry? Lu-En raised a brow. Professor Snape. Sirius repeated the title bitterly. So that Death Eater was now a teacher at Hogwarts. Lu-En continued writing. Nothing serious. Just constant point deductions and harassment. Sirius slammed his fist against the sofa arm. That bastard. He could already picture James's son being singled out daily. And the anger in his chest burned hotter than ever. The next day, early morning. After Lu-En got dressed, he pushed open the bedroom door and walked towards the hall on the first floor. Sirius, who was curled up and sleeping on the sofa, was awakened by the sound of going downstairs. He quickly took out his wand from his waist and subconsciously aimed at the entrance of the stairs. It is you. Seeing the handsome face walking down the stairs, Sirius remembered that he was safe and heaved a sigh of relief. He put the wand back on his waist and stretched his waist vigorously. Since he escaped from Azkaban, his mental state has been tense, and he has never slept as well as last night. Even in Azkaban, you have to be the food of those suckers every night, and you can't get a good night's sleep. Good morning, Lu-En kid. When Sirius learned that Lu-En was only a third-year wizard, his attitude became even more arrogant. 6,699. Lu-En looked up at him and said nothing. He is not the kind of person who cares about things, and he is basically not that strict with some common etiquette. Hey, are we going to eat these 713 rock cakes in the morning? At this moment, Sirius stuck out his head from the kitchen and asked suspiciously. In his hand, he still held the Kaoya biscuits that he chose not to eat last night. Seriously, if he wanted to eat this biscuit, Sirius reckoned that he would have to use Animagus to chew it. Is this biscuit eaten by humans? Looking at Sirius, who was picking and choosing in the kitchen, Lu-En's mouth twitched. Suddenly want to give him a petrification spell. After a hearty pumpkin pie breakfast, Lu-En went to Mrs. Malkin's clothing store to buy some summer clothes for Sirius. No way, Let Sirius sleep on the sofa all night, and the whole sofa is just ridiculous. Plus, a Collie's Potions shop has 2 bedrooms with beds. One is his and the other is Miss Hermione's pink bedroom. So I can only let Sirius sleep on the sofa. When he is properly sorted out today, he will be sent to Senior Tom. The clothes fit well. So when are we going to catch that mouse? Sirius, who put on new clothes, still thinks about the culprit, Peter Pettigrew. Wait until I start school. It's not important to catch mice. It's important to prove that you are innocent. Lewin took a sip of his bitter coffee, drawing lightly in midair with his wand. Since Miss Hermione was away from him, the morning drink had changed from chocolate milk to a variety of tea or coffee. Maybe it's a habit. Hogwarts starts in September, which means there is still about a month left to board. Sirius suppressed his restless heart. He knew what Lewin said was right. Only by proving his innocence can he return to his godson. After Lewin found him a set of black robes to put on, he was ready to take him to Knockturn Alley to find Tom. According to a recent letter from Tom, they are now preparing to attack Selwyn Manor. Almost all of the werewolves in Knockturn Alley chose to surrender under the power of the horse charm. No werewolf can resist the temptation to turn back into a wizard. Nasty Alley. Looking at the alley leading to the opposite side of Diagon Alley, Sirius took the wand in his hand without hesitation. He had been to Knockturn Alley a long time ago, and he naturally knew that it was full of notorious dark wizards. Where did you get your wand from? Lewin glanced curiously at the patterned wand in his hand. He remembered that any prisoners who were held in Azkaban had their wands kept by the Ministry of Magic. Because of the existence of the flashback charm, every wand of the criminal becomes evidence in the hall. From a passing wizard. Sirius said disapprovingly. As a qualified fugitive, it is dangerous without a wand. Maybe someday an Auror will come to the door with a team. After crossing the dark street, Lewin took Sirius towards the northwest. Where are we going? After walking for a while with Sirius wearing a hood behind him, he couldn't help asking. The two of them were almost on their way to the suburbs. After walking a little further, we completely reached the boundary of Knockturn Alley. Just in the ruins ahead. Lewin held the address written by Morris and looked at the ruins of the house in front of him with a pair of pale blue eyes. Not many wizards would choose to live here, only the homeless, and even fugitives would choose to come here. Waiting for the two to get closer, Sirius frowned and clenched his wand. He felt that a lot of eyes were watching the two of them. Lewin knocked on the wooden door before walking to the door of a small 2-story building. Creak. A sour voice sounded, and the one who opened the door was Senior Tom, who had been working day and night in Knockturn Alley for half a month. You still have the face, Gerald. Tom gritted his teeth. Not only is the whites of his eyes pitch black now, but even the underside of his eyes has thick dark circles. Under Lewin's orders, he could only rest for 4 hours a day, and the rest of the time was full of high-intensity work. Even the house elves were not squeezed so much in the first place. Gerald, you should hang on the street lamp. Good afternoon, Senior Tom. Lewin held down Sirius, who was about to take out his wand, and said with a smile, This is not for your health. I have found you a good assistant. 99. Tom sneered disdainfully. If he could commit suicide, he would have gone to the god of death long ago. Unfortunately not. Tom didn't bother to look at the annoying face, turned and walked into the cabin. Who is he? Sirius, who was startled by those strange eyes, asked curiously. Tom Riddle. This is my right-hand man at Knockturn Alley. 39. I'm sure you two will have a good time, Lewin said with a chuckle. After all, he was the Voldemort of his youth. Get along well. Sirius nodded thoughtfully upon hearing this. In other words, in the past few days, does he have to work with this young wizard? Lewin pushed open the wooden door that was closed again, and then walked in with little Sirius Wolfstar. It is noon now, and the weather in July is very hot, but after entering the house, a cool feeling hits instantly, as if you are in winter. Why do I feel the way your people look at us is wrong? Sirius observed the wizards around him and whispered in Lewin's ear. The eyes of the wizards clearly did not recognize him. No wonder, after all, it's always been Tom doing things for me. Lewin chuckled and described it in words. He did speak just now, but he still felt uncomfortable, so he switched back to the words. After all, the leaf had been in his mouth for nearly half a month. Then your relationship is really good. Seeing this sentence, Sirius Black sighed a little. Like this mutual trusting friendship, he couldn't help thinking of himself and James. 66.99. Lewin turned his head and glanced at him, looking a little strange. I don't know if Tom will kill Sirius after knowing this sentence. If Senior Tom had a killer, it wasn't Harry, nor Dumbledore, but Lou and Gerald. Master Gerald. At this time, Morris, who had been busy all the time, hurried over. What are Tom's plans lately? 35. Lewin waved the wand in his hand, and blue writing appeared in the air. Morris naturally knew that his master had been practicing AF***CK Gus. Mr. Riddle is going to gather these werewolves to attack Selwyn's estate in a few days. Morris said respectfully, ignoring Tom, whose face was darkened behind him. After all, he has a clear distinction between primary and secondary. Wolfman. Standing aside, Sirius couldn't help but mutter to himself. His eyes hidden in the black robe looked at the wizards around him. Looking at the number, there are probably dozens of people. Does this bring together the werewolves of the entire Nocturne Alley? How could these werewolves be so obedient? The doubts in Sirius's heart grew stronger and stronger. Could it be wolf poison? Even in Azkaban, he has the habit of reading daily newspapers, so he naturally knows about the wolf poison potion that was researched not long ago. Just follow Tom's plan. Lewin looked at the gloomy youth leaning on the chair, with a smile on the corner of his mouth. As expected of Senior Tom, resurrecting him is indeed the right thing to do. I am afraid that when the school starts, the entire Nocturne Alley will be mastered by more than half. 3 days later. Inside Diagon Alley. The wooden door rang with a wind chime, and a white elf flew in, with several letters and the latest Daily Prophet tied to his feet. After the black dog lying on the ground raised its head and glanced at it, it continued to crawl on the carpet and went to sleep. Considering that the transfiguration spell might not last long, Lewin had Sirius take the shape of AF***CK Gus and stay in the shop. There have been quite a few aura raids in Nocturne Alley recently, and even some shops in Diagon Alley have been implicated. Lewin opened the envelope from Miss Granger. The beautiful handwriting told of Miss, and there are several photos of the trip. Lewin put these photos into a photo album on the side, and then picked up the quill to start the daily reply. After stuffing the written letter into the envelope, Lewin thought about it and picked up a blank piece of paper. He remembered that 7.31 seemed to be Harry's birthday and happened to write back together. After the enchanted birthday card was written, Lewin walked up to Sirius, who was sleeping on the ground, and kicked him. Ugh. The black dog raised his head and looked at Lewin suspiciously, not knowing what he was doing. It's Harry Potter's birthday in a few days. Don't you Godfather show it? Lewin just finished writing this sentence when he saw Sirius changed back from the black dog state. Harry's birthday? Sirius also remembered. He quickly picked up the hood and put it on, ready to turn around to buy birthday gifts. Flowers 0. It's just that one foot just stepped out of the door frame, and he took it back. Lend me some gold galleons. 9. Sirius said softly with some embarrassment. In the past few days, he has been eating and drinking in this potion shop, completely forgetting that he has just escaped from prison and is currently penniless. Don't worry, as soon as I get back to Black's ancestral home, I'll pay you back the double gold galleon, he said with confidence. How does Sirius feel like a scammer? Lewin shook his head speechlessly, but still threw him a bag of galleons. There are about 300 or 400 in it, enough for Sirius to buy gifts. Thanks. After taking the heavy purse, Sirius couldn't help but smile, and the thick beard on his face trembled with the smile. Lewin sat behind the counter with one hand on his chin, watching the figures sneaking out of the potion shop, the corners of his mouth cocked slightly. Sirius is in much better shape than when he first met him. The eyes that were full of tiredness and hatred disappeared, and even the demeanor did not have that gloomy and indifferent look. Especially when he heard Harry's birthday just now, his eyes were filled with excitement and joy. After so many years of being imprisoned in Azkaban, it is rare to have such an emotion of joy. Peter Pettigrew. Thinking of the disgusting mouse, Lewin could not help narrowing his pale blue eyes. About evening, Sirius finally returned. He was holding a newest magic broom, Firebolt, in his hand, with an uncontrollable smile on his face. Sirius heard from Lewin that Harry joined Gryffindor's Quidditch team when he was in first grade, so give him the latest broom and you'll love it. Lewin looked at the broom and was stunned for a while. This Firebolt seems to be on the market recently. Thinking of this, he turned his attention to Sirius. It's over. Noticing Lewin's gaze, Sirius took out his empty wallet and shrugged. Get along well. Sirius nodded thoughtfully upon hearing this. In other words, in the past few days, does he have to work with this young wizard? Lewin pushed open the wooden door that was closed again, and then walked in with little Sirius Wolfstar. It is noon now, and the weather in July is very hot, but after entering the house, a cool feeling hits instantly, as if you are in winter. Why do I feel the way your people look at us is wrong? Sirius observed the wizards around him and whispered in Lewin's ear. The eyes of the wizards clearly did not recognize him. No wonder, after all, it's always been Tom doing things for me. Lewin chuckled and described it in words. He did speak just now, but he still felt uncomfortable, so he switched back to the words. After all, the leaf had been in his mouth for nearly half a month. Then your relationship is really good. Seeing this sentence, Sirius Black sighed a little. Like this mutual trusting friendship, he couldn't help thinking of himself and James. 66.99. Lewin turned his head and glanced at him, looking a little strange. I don't know if Tom will kill Sirius after knowing this sentence. If Senior Tom had a killer, it wasn't Harry, nor Dumbledore, but Lou and Gerald. Master Gerald. At this time, Morris, who had been busy all the time, hurried over. What are Tom's plans lately? 35. Lewin waved the wand in his hand, and blue writing appeared in the air. Morris naturally knew that his master had been practicing AF***CK Gus. Mr. Riddle is going to gather these werewolves to attack Selwyn's estate in a few days. Morris said respectfully, ignoring Tom, whose face was darkened behind him. After all, he has a clear distinction between primary and secondary. Wolfman. Standing aside, Sirius couldn't help but mutter to himself. His eyes hidden in the black robe looked at the wizards around him. Looking at the number, there are probably dozens of people. Does this bring together the werewolves of the entire Nocturne Alley? How could these werewolves be so obedient? The doubts in Sirius's heart grew stronger and stronger. Could it be wolf poison? Even in Azkaban, he has the habit of reading daily newspapers, so he naturally knows about the wolf poison potion that was researched not long ago. Just follow Tom's plan. Lewin looked at the gloomy youth leaning on the chair, with a smile on the corner of his mouth. As expected of Senior Tom, resurrecting him is indeed the right thing to do. I am afraid that when the school starts, the entire Nocturne Alley will be mastered by more than half. 3 days later. Inside Diagon Alley. The wooden door rang with a wind chime, and a white elf flew in, with several letters and the latest Daily Prophet tied to his feet. After the black dog lying on the ground raised its head and glanced at it, it continued to crawl on the carpet and went to sleep. Considering that the transfiguration spell might not last long, Lewin had Sirius take the shape of AF***CK Gus and stay in the shop. There have been quite a few aura raids in Nocturne Alley recently, and even some shops in Diagon Alley have been implicated. Lewin opened the envelope from Miss Granger. The beautiful handwriting told of Miss, and there are several photos of the trip. Lewin put these photos into a photo album on the side, and then picked up the quill to start the daily reply. After stuffing the written letter into the envelope, Lewin thought about it and picked up a blank piece of paper. He remembered that 7.31 seemed to be Harry's birthday and happened to write back together. After the enchanted birthday card was written, Lewin walked up to Sirius, who was sleeping on the ground, and kicked him. Ugh. The black dog raised his head and looked at Lewin suspiciously, not knowing what he was doing. It's Harry Potter's birthday in a few days. Don't you Godfather show it? Lewin just finished writing this sentence when he saw Sirius changed back from the black dog state. Harry's birthday? Sirius also remembered. He quickly picked up the hood and put it on, ready to turn around to buy birthday gifts. Flowers 0. It's just that one foot just stepped out of the door frame, and he took it back. That, lend me some gold galleons. 9. Sirius said softly with some embarrassment. In the past few days, he has been eating and drinking in this potion shop, completely forgetting that he has just escaped from prison and is currently penniless. Don't worry, as soon as I get back to Black's ancestral home, I'll pay you back the double gold galleon, he said with confidence. How does Sirius feel like a scammer? Luan shook his head speechlessly, but still threw him a bag of galleons. There are about 300 or 400 in it, enough for Sirius to buy gifts. Thanks. After taking the heavy purse, Sirius couldn't help but smile, and the thick beard on his face trembled with the smile. Luan sat behind the counter with one hand on his chin, watching the figures sneaking out of the potion shop, the corners of his mouth cocked slightly. Sirius is in much better shape than when he first met him. The eyes that were full of tiredness and hatred disappeared, and even the demeanor did not have that gloomy and indifferent look. Especially when he heard Harry's birthday just now, his eyes were filled with excitement and joy. After so many years of being imprisoned in Azkaban, it is rare to have such an emotion of joy. Peter Pettigrew. Thinking of the disgusting mouse, Luan could not help narrowing his pale blue eyes. About evening, Sirius finally returned. He was holding a newest magic broom, Firebolt, in his hand, with an uncontrollable smile on his face. Sirius heard from Luan that Harry joined Gryffindor's Quidditch team when he was in first grade, so give him the latest broom and you'll love it. Luan looked at the broom and was stunned for a while. This Firebolt seems to be on the market recently. Thinking of this, he turned his attention to Sirius. It's over. Noticing Luan's gaze, Sirius took out his empty wallet and shrugged. After sending the gifts that Sirius bought together, Luan picked up the Daily Prophet on the side of the table and glanced at it. The middle position of the daily newspaper was always the most conspicuous and most important. After seeing the headlines, he was slightly stunned. It was a beautiful manor that was burning with raging flames, and there were several dead wizards lying on the scorched ground. Immediately afterwards, Luan saw the familiar Sirius wanted notice in the lower left corner of the daily newspaper. This news actually suppressed Sirius's wanted order? You must know that in the past 2 weeks, whether it is the Daily Prophet or other miscellaneous daily newspapers, the most headline position is always the dynamic photo of Sirius roaring. It can be said that as long as Sirius is not hunted down for a day, then the popularity of July 13th will never decrease. And now it has been headlined by a burning manor. The famous pureblood family, Selwyn Manor, was attacked by a group of premeditated dark wizards. At present, the Auror of the Ministry of Magic has been involved in the investigation. Selwyn Manor? Luan's pale blue eyes widened after seeing the name of the manor. Isn't this the pureblood family Tom and the others are going to attack? It's only been 2 days in the past. I didn't expect Senior Tom to start so quickly. Selwyn Manor? Hey, it seems that Nocturne Alley and Diagon Alley are going to be tossed by that chubby ugly woman recently. Sirius walked over, glanced at it, and said involuntarily, "Chunky ugly woman?" Luan gave him a puzzled look. Dolores Umbridge, Minister Fudge's confidant. I used to see her every day in Azkaban. The pink-skinned toad has a blood relationship with the Selwyn family. She herself claims to be the pure blood of the Selwyn family. Oh, and now the Selwyn family is completely destroyed. Sirius explained with a sneer. After so many years in Azkaban, he has long known the bottom of the short, ugly woman. Umbridge? Luan half squinted his eyes, some impressions in his mind. There may be a large number of Aurors to investigate in the last few days. You try to maintain the state of scolding the F***CK Gus. 99. He reminded Sirius beside him. I know. Sirius nodded in disapproval, then cast AF**CK Gus and turned back into a black dog. Fortunately, the 4 of them were not registered with the Ministry of Magic in their AF**CK form at that time. Otherwise, the current Sirius would have been brought back to Azkaban by those Dementors. I don't know what form Luan's AF**CK Gus is. Crawling on the soft carpet, the black dog's pair of golden beast pupils looked at the little wizard who turned to study and couldn't help thinking in his heart. This is simply the most diligent and best-learned little wizard he has ever seen. He is studying all kinds of things every day, either potions or alchemy, most of which even he doesn't understand or even hear. Do third-year wizards at Hogwarts know so much now? There is still about half a month before the start of school in September, and the hot temperature has gradually become a little cooler. A white elf flew in from the door and window and delivered a Hogwarts opening letter. Luwen opened it and looked at it, and it marked the books and a new cauldron and potion materials to be used for the next semester. Is it time to start school again? Luwen looked at the letter in his hand and whispered to himself. The mandrake leaf in his mouth was taken out and put into a small crystal vial on the night of the full moon last night, and the potion mixture needed and it was added under the illumination of the moonlight. Now it's time to prepare for stormy weather. And Sirius, who was originally lodging in a Collie's pharmacy, had gone to Nocturne Alley with Senior Tom after the Auror's frantic investigation some time ago. Especially after learning from those werewolves that the handsome young man had a mysterious charm that could make a werewolf turn back into a wizard, Sirius surrounded Tom almost every day. It seems that Sirius is also very interested in this magical charm. Luwen looked at the name of the professor of the new dark magic defense class on the envelope and couldn't help but smile. Remus John Lupin. After putting this letter away, Luwen was ready to go to the room of requirement at Hogwarts first. He had put the potion from last night into the Chouet space in a dark and silent place. I hope that the environment produced by responsiveness can be useful. Otherwise, he estimates that he will have to wait for a long natural storm. Before leaving, Luwen locked the door of the potions shop and then slowly disappeared in place through Camui, the 8th floor of Hogwarts. As the space twisted into a vortex, Luwen's figure appeared in an inconspicuous corner. The surrounding walls were covered with frescoes, and not far away was the Fat Lady, the portrait of the entrance to Gryffindor. "Good morning, Fat Lady." When passing by the Fat Lady, Luwen greeted him politely as he always does in school. "Oh, you nasty little wizard again, wait." 35. The Fat Lady who was sleeping was awakened, and she blamed the blonde little wizard angrily. But in the middle of speaking, the Fat Lady stopped abruptly. "Merlin's beard, it's the holidays." 35. She let out an exclamation, but Luwen's figure slowly walked 0.1 away. When he came to the portrait of the troll, he still meditated on the environment he wanted. Dark nights, storms, silent forests. After walking back and forth 3 times, a smooth door appeared on the wall behind him. Luwen pushed open the door and walked in. The moment he stepped into this door, he felt a cold wind blowing. When he entered the room of requirement, he found that he was already in a dense forest, like the forbidden forest of Hogwarts. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the dark clouds were still floating in the distance. Could the House of Requirement even simulate this scenario? Luwen murmured softly. When Luwen walked into the room of requirement, there was a flash of amazement in his eyes. This room is indeed the most mysterious place in the entire Hogwarts, and the dark forest with weather changes can be simulated. How is the House of Requirement made? As a self-taught alchemist, Luwen couldn't help but wonder. It seems that there is time to take a good look at the composition of the House of Requirement. To be able to create such a large space out of thin air, it would be impossible to achieve without strong magic support. So, where did these torrent-like magic powers come from? Now Luwen is more and more curious about the hidden secrets of Hogwarts. But now is not the time to think about that. He put these complicated and fascinating questions behind him and then took out the prepared crystal vial from the Chouet space. The next thing to do is to keep the bottle of mixture in a quiet, dark place. According to the book, The Origin of AF*CK Gus, the best way is to bury it in the ground. Don't look at it or disturb it until the next thunderstorm. This step is simple. Luwen randomly found a sturdy old tree, dug a deep hole in its root, and buried the small medicine bottle in it. Then used the wand to carve marks on this ancient tree. All that needs to be done now is to wait for the storm to come in a week's time. According to Luwen's conception of this space, it will start to rain in a week, and then it will be good to dig it out. After finishing everything, he clapped the soil in his hands, turned and left the forest shrouded in moonlight. All I have to do for the rest of the week is to hold the wand at the position of the heart and recite the mantra silently every day. Until the storm comes, there is no shortage of spells that need to be chanted. Walking out of the room of requirement, Luan looked up and looked around. The originally bustling Hogwarts castle was very deserted at the moment, and even the portraits who usually chatted fell into a deep sleep. The only people left at Hogwarts now are Filch, a few professors and a group of house elves. And Hagrid, who moved back to the Forbidden Forest. After a semester of investigation, Dumbledore did not find the dangerous creature that was destroying the Forbidden Forest, so Hagrid moved back on his own initiative. After all, he still has quite a few cuties that are kept in the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Not good if you starve to death. As the whirlpool turned, Luan disappeared into the silent castle of Hogwarts. Although Shinwei's ability is not limited by Hogwarts, it needs to set the space coordinates in advance, which is not as good as Apparition. As long as there is a target land, Apparition can be activated. Would you like to go to Senior Tom to learn Apparition? Luan, who returned to the Akali potion store, muttered to himself in a low voice. After being silent for a whole month, it feels really good to be able to speak. He stretched hard and looked at the empty potion shop. After thinking about it, Luan was about to close the door and go to Nocturne Alley to see Tom. Anyway, there weren't many people coming to his potion shop during the whole holiday except for the dark wizards in Nocturne Alley. To be honest, this store is Luan playing. The real profitable business still depends on the Weasley brothers' fairy tale. Those entertainment cards are the best choice for making money. I don't know what happened to Fred and their werewolf-killing research. Inside Nocturne Alley. So far, the dark wizard power that Tom has in Nocturne Alley has not been underestimated, especially after the last raid on Selwyn Manor. Some black industries have also been successfully controlled by him. Have your mandrake leaves been buried? Tom took a sip of butterbeer with ice cubes and asked Luan, who was opposite him, with a blank eye. AF*CK Gus's transformation will be ready in a few days. 35. Luan said with a chuckle. After more than a month of getting along, Tom has almost accepted the current situation. At least he doesn't have any resistance now. Then your F*CK Gus form must be a dog. Tom sneered every day. Since the last diary incident has been madly pressing him, Luan's F*CK Gus is not a dog, and he can't accept it. Sirius, who was sitting at the table next to Morris, frowned, feeling as if he had been offended. What happened to the dog? Did the dog eat your food? But he looked at the horse charm hanging on Tom's chest, and after thinking about it, he didn't talk back. After all, Sirius has a friend who is suffering from the werewolf curse. Senior Tom, you haven't learned the F*CK Gus yet? In the face of Tom's ridicule, Luan obviously disapproved. Just got used to it. I don't have time to learn that boring stuff. 99. Tom's tone was disdainful. In his opinion, AF*CK Gus can only be turned into some ordinary creatures without any practicality, and it is not as easy to kill as his death curse. So, what's the matter with you coming to Nocturne Alley this time? 35. Tom didn't want to continue dawdling with the wizard, and it was a torment for him to sit here. It hurts to see Luan. What can I do? Seeing Tom's expression of disbelief, Luan shrugged and said, I just came to you to learn the apparition charm. 99. Hearing the learning spell, Senior Tom's face darkened. To scoop up his wool again. After coming out of Nocturne Alley, Luan walked slowly in the evening sun. Senior Tom's ability to explain is very strong, and there is a Sirius on the side for tutoring. So it only took one afternoon to master all the theoretical knowledge. Looking at the Akali magic pharmacy shrouded in the dusk, Luan gently pushed open the wooden door with the wind chimes. Jingle tilde operator. As the wind chimes rang, the vision in front of his eyes turned black, and the soft touch gently covered his eyes. Guess who I am? Guess who I am, Mr. Gerald? A sweet light laughter came from behind him, and the familiar floral fragrance also stirred the tip of his nose, and the smell of jasmine was very strong. Hearing this familiar voice, the corners of Luan's mouth couldn't help laughing. Instead of smirking Tom and Sirius with their smirks, it's a smile that comes from the heart. Miss Beaver. Lu-en guessed softly, with a hint of a smile in his tone. Wrong. Hearing the title of Miss Beaver, the figure standing behind him stomped his little feet hard. But I know Miss Beaver with curly brown hair. Lu-en took the hands that covered his eyes. The soft skin felt slippery, so, dear Miss Granger, can you let go? After taking the hands off, he turned around and hugged the other one around Miss Hermione's waist. With just a little force, and with an exclamation, Hermione was held in Lu-en's arms in a princess hug. Long time no see, Hermione. Lu-en brought his face closer, his eyes met, and the tips of his nose touched each other. Long time no see. Hermione's brown eyes flashed with joy. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck, slowly closing her eyes and leaning in. About 2 minutes passed. The two gradually separated. Did you miss me? Hermione squeezed Lu-en's nose with her hand and asked softly. I won't buy this store without you. Lu-en chuckled and put Hermione on the sofa, and the two leaned against each other. Then she took a cup of iced black tea and placed it in front of her table. You bought this place? Hermione asked with wide eyes in disbelief. She also worked in Diagon Alley for 2 months last vacation, so she naturally has a general understanding of the housing prices here. That's simply the astronomical gold galleon. But Lu-en bought it outright? This store will be handed over to Fred in the future. After all, Fairy Tale also needs a prime location. Lu-en explained by stroking his brown curly hair. If we're buying a house to live in, we'd be better off picking houses from Hogsmeade or Autry San Catchpole. Actually, I personally like going to the village of San Catchpole, after all Weasley and they are there. Hermione stared at Lu-en, who was explaining to her in surprise with her wide brown eyes. Has Lu-en already thought of such a long-term place? So, do you like small lakes and gardens? Lu-en asked softly. Like. Hermione nodded vigorously. As long as she's with Lu-en, she'll love it wherever she goes. By the way, are you the only one here? 35. Lu-en asked with some doubts. I told my father and the others that I will work with you next time. Hermione said with a sly look in her eyes. Really? 35. Lu-en raised his eyebrows and glanced at Miss Hermione, who was beaming with a smile. It's still August, and although the weather isn't as hot as July, it's still unbearable. So Hermione wore a black plaid shirt today, with a light white long skirt and a pair of black stockings on the lower body, looking very charming. Like it? Noticing Lu-en's gaze, Hermione stood up happily and circled in front of him. The pale white long skirt danced for it, and even the brown curly hair tied into a high ponytail at the back of the head was scattered. As long as it's you, I like it. Lu-en looked at Miss Granger, who was dancing like a butterfly, and said in admiration. He hadn't seen each other for nearly a month, but he always felt that Hermione had grown a lot taller, much taller than before. I'm going to help you clean up your room. Lu-en pulled Hermione by the hand and pressed her onto the sofa, then got up and walked towards the stairs. Today, can I be with you? 35. However, as soon as he took a step, the corner of his shirt was pulled out by Hermione. She asked softly with half-closed eyes. If it wasn't for Lu-en's 5 senses being strengthened, he could hardly hear the sound. This is not good? Lu-en said hesitantly, but he turned and walked towards the kitchen. Anything you want to eat tonight? Hermione couldn't help laughing when she heard this. I want to eat hot pot. She reminisced about the dinner in the room of requirement. Hot pot? Lu-en froze for a moment. Although this season is not right, it is not impossible to eat. After all, the temperature in the room has reached about 16 or 7 degrees under the effect of the cooling spell, and it is completely different from the sultry environment outside. Wait a minute, I'll go get ready. After Lu-en turned his head and said a word, he walked into the kitchen. It just happened that the rest of the last time was stored in the Shui space, and it was not damaged. When everything was ready, Lu-en used a shape-shifting spell to create a hole in the middle of the table with a lot of materials. This is not in the room of responsiveness, so you can't use the cutting spell to get started directly. After I was busy with the set, the sky outside gradually became dark. The bright moonlight was blocked by dark clouds, and the dazzling moonlight could not be seen. What have you been doing this month? As the flames burned, Lu-en set up the dishes and sat opposite Hermione. and Miss Hermione, who was playing with chopsticks, looked a little unskilled. After all, she had never eaten with such a tool. To this end, he also prepared a set of silver forks and spoons for Hermione. "I've been traveling with me this month. Didn't I send you all the photos?" Hermione looked at the chopsticks in her hand and gave up after trying hard. He turned to pick up the fork beside him. "Have you been opening shop in Diagon Alley this month?" Hermione asked curiously. She remembered Luen saying that he was going to Nocturne Alley to do some work this holiday. "Probably so. I occasionally go to Nocturne Alley to have a look." Luen chuckled. In the originally quiet potion shop, there was now a lively atmosphere, just like last holiday. The hot night wind blew the wind chimes hanging on the wooden pattern door, making a crisp sound. Inside the Akali potion shop, the whole room became very cool under the blessing of the spell, and after eating, Hermione even put on a green robe of Luen and leaned on the sofa. Although she said she brought her own suitcase, she prefers to take one from the hanger next to her rather than her own clothes. The familiar smell made Hermione gently twitch the tip of her nose. "It's like the scent of the love potion I drank in the basement last vacation. Fragrant and charming." On the other hand, Luen packed up everything he had eaten and changed the table along the way. When he came out of the kitchen, what he saw was Miss Hermione in a daze wrapped in her robe. "What do you think?" Luen smiled and walked over, rubbing her brown curly hair with her hands. "It feels the same as when we parted a few months ago. Thinking of you." A small smile appeared on Hermione's face, and she laughed softly, imitating his usual habit of speaking. "It would be my pleasure, dear Miss Granger." Luen sat on the sofa and looked at the smiling girl with 717 and slowly reached out and hugged. And Hermione also took advantage of the situation to lie in his arms and gently rubbed Luen's chest with her head. "Where's your spell?" Miss Hermione asked suddenly. She remembered that the charm depicting a horse was always worn on her chest, and she even met each other every time they hugged. But this time it didn't feel like it. "I gave it to a senior to go to Nocturne Alley, and it will be returned to me when school starts," Luen explained. "Really?" Hermione raised her head and stared straight at those pale blue eyes she hadn't seen in a long time, the corners of her mouth twitching. She didn't pursue her further because Miss Granger knew he was trying to keep her from knowing what happened in Nocturne Alley. In other words, it is a kind of protection. "I was just wondering what it would taste like if you drank a bottle of ecstasy." Hermione spoke with curiosity the questions she was thinking about in a daze. After hearing this sentence, Luen was slightly taken aback, and then he laughed a little dumbly. Did Miss Granger always remember the bottle of love potion she drank on vacation? Until now, I still think about letting him take a sip. But the taste. Luen can guess even without drinking. It should be a strong jasmine scent. As for the rest of the scent, I don't know. Luen's answer made Hermione's ears flush. Isn't the smell of jasmine just the fragrance of her hair? I don't believe it, unless you take a sip. The girl narrowed her eyes and whispered softly. This, isn't it? Luen hesitated and replied. Love potion should not be drunk indiscriminately. If he drank it, he would probably go to live in Azkaban with Sirius. Speaking of which, did Miss Hermione want him to take a sip last term? It's a thief. I miss you so much. Hermione couldn't help but leaned up and rubbed Luen's cheek with her small head. It's like being in a room of demand. After a few months of absence, she still couldn't control her behavior when she saw this familiar and handsome face again. Me too. Luen felt a little itchy side face and hugged Miss Granger's waist with a chuckle. A young couple who hadn't seen for a long time wanted to hug each other. Bell, bell. At this time, the wind chime at the door rang. Approaching the carved wooden door, it was gently opened. A black dog? Hermione looked up at the door. I saw a larger black dog pressing its head against the door and walked into the potion shop's kitchen with ease, completely unaware of the eyes of the young couple in the corner. Luen looked at the black dog who entered the kitchen with a helpless expression. Why did Sirius come to him again looking for food? Is the food on Tom's side that bad? Do you still have pets? Hermione asked curiously. Although the black dog looked fierce, it was not unacceptable since it was adopted by Luen. Ah, so it's... Luen hesitated for a moment, then nodded slightly. After all, he has been in charge of eating and controlling. This black dog is indeed like a pet. Have you ever been sterilized? Hermione asked immediately. No. Hearing this sentence, Luen shook his head with a complicated expression. If this black dog is neutered, I am afraid that Sirius will definitely give him an Avada with his wand. It just so happens that my father knows a great veterinarian. Why don't we take this black dog with us tomorrow? Hermione rubbed her head against Luen's cheek and made an offer. Hey Luen, how come you only have rock crust cakes here again? At this moment, a slightly hoarse voice came from the kitchen, interrupting what Hermione was about to say, leaving her stunned. Is it a hallucination? Hermione raised her head and set her eyes on the kitchen door. I saw a middle-aged man with long hair and a beard coming out with a rock cake in his mouth, complaining as he walked. Can't you just eat what normal people eat? Is there not enough food for you at Tom's? Luen patted Hermione on the shoulder and said in a helpless tone. Hermione opened her eyes wide, and her brown pupils looked at the man incredulously. It was a black dog who just went in. Wait, it's AF*CK Gus. The clever Miss Hermione figured it out at once. But where did this face seem to be seen? She couldn't help thinking. TSK, I can't grab those werewolves. Sirius shook his head and walked over. But when he walked to the opposite side of the sofa, he suddenly froze. Well, isn't it time for me to come? Sirius scratched his head and questioned. It's really not the time. Luen shook his head. Little Sirius looked at the young couple leaning against each other with a complicated look and took a bite of the hard rock crust pie. A creaking sound came from his mouth. You are Azkaban's fugitive, Sirius Black. 99. The frowning Miss Hermione finally remembered. Sirius Black. This name has been in the headlines of the Daily Prophet since the holiday. His evil deeds are almost well known. Hey, little witch. Take it easy. Seeing Hermione frowning, Sirius hurriedly raised his hand to indicate that he had no malice. Seeing how the two were leaning on each other, he also knew that this little witch was probably Luen's little girlfriend. Sirius Black, my, friend. Luen thought about it and introduced it to Hermione beside him. Friend. Hermione muttered to herself in disbelief. She looked at the helpless Sirius with a pair of eyes suspiciously. You must know that in the daily newspaper, the first fugitive of Azkaban made the whole wizarding world panic, and even Hermione, who was traveling abroad, had heard of this name. How did Luen befriend the fugitive? And this fugitive is also an unregistered F***CK Gus. He escaped from Azkaban in the form of a black dog. Sirius was wronged, and he's Harry's godfather. Luen glanced at Sirius, who was standing with his hands raised, and began to explain to Hermione. The experience of Sirius is still very tragic. From being framed by Peter Pettigrew and imprisoned in Azkaban, he has endured the torture of Dementors for several years. Now escaped from prison to visit his godson, Harry Potter. That's right, Sirius' purpose in escaping from Azkaban was to not rest assured of Harry's comfort, not to hunt down Peter Pettigrew's mouse. Listening to Luen's narration for himself, Sirius nodded quickly. Harry's godfather? After listening to Luen's explanation, Hermione also felt some sympathy for the haggard, middle-aged man in front of her. Well, if nothing happens, I'll go to Nocturne Alley first. Sirius glanced at the little witch who was already convinced, and said to Luen next to her, Tom asked me to go back early. He has been following Tom Riddle in Nocturne Alley for the past 2 weeks. He still has some admiration for that handsome young man who wears dark circles every day. So far, nearly half of the dark wizards in Nocturne Alley have entered Tom's position. Okay. 55. Luen nodded with a chuckle. He still sees Tom's efforts and has to say that letting him manage Nocturne Alley is definitely a correct choice. As the wind chimes rang again, a black dog left the potion shop in the dark. After watching the poor man leave, Hermione also came back to her senses. She looked at Luen with doubtful eyes and asked softly, Who is Senior Tom? She found that she hadn't seen each other for 2 months, and she became less and less aware of the things around her little boyfriend. Tom Riddle, a Slytherin graduate, was a friend of mine, Luen said with a sip of iced black tea. Anyway, He already had enough friends, and this one was not bad. Friends again. Hermione glanced at him with bright eyes. It always feels like a lie. Forget it. Luann lied to her not once or twice anyway. What time is it now? Finding a comfortable position in his arms, the little witch raised her head and asked. It's only 11 o'clock. Luann stroked his brown curly hair like a cat, looking thoughtful. You are tired? A little. Hermione looked at Luann with wide eyes, but there was no sleepiness on her face. Looking at the girl in his arms, the corners of Luann's mouth twitched. He picked her up with a slight force in both hands. Then he waved the wand in his hand to extinguish the fire in the hall, and then walked up the stairs step by step. The two people's bedrooms are opposite, but at Miss Granger's request, the pink-hued room that belongs to her has not been taken care of, so they can only sleep in his room together. Although for a good little wizard, cleaning out a dusty bedroom is just a spell. Putting the slightly closed Miss Granger gently on the soft bed, Luann pulled the screen by the window, and the white moonlight shone on the wooden floor, looking like a layer of gauze. The two who haven't seen each other for a long time always have a lot to talk about. From travel to alchemy and finally to AF*CK Gus. Speaking of AF*CK Gus, Hermione suddenly remembered something. For Flowers 0. She pinched the tip of Luann's nose leaning against the wall with her hand, and asked curiously, Didn't you say you should learn the F*CK format during the holidays? Half of the study is done, now it's time to wait for the storm to come. Luann answered her without hiding. Anyway, AF*CK Gus is not something that needs to be kept secret. After all, everyone's AF*CK Gus is just some ordinary animals. This simply represents Transfiguration's highest honor. You've had mandrake leaves for a month? Hermione quipped, then it looks like I'm here at the right time. 39. Yes. Luann smiled and picked up a strand of loose brown curls with his fingers and used it to gently stroke the tip of Miss Hermione's nose. Your bad habit hasn't changed at all. Hermione hurried away from him, rubbing the tip of her itchy nose with her hand and complaining softly. You are a little taller than before. Luann shrugged in praise. The next morning. Get up, Miss Hermione. Luann yawned and sat up from his seat next to the bed, turning his head to look at Hermione behind him. As a result, nothing was seen. What about people? He thought suspiciously. If it weren't for some long brown curly hair and that familiar smell by the bed, he would have thought yesterday was just a dream. After getting dressed, Luann pushed the door and walked down the stairs. A scent came from the kitchen. Good morning, Luann. Perhaps hearing a clunk on the stairs, Miss Hermione leaned halfway out of the kitchen in a gray apron. Good morning, Miss Granger. A look of surprise flashed in Luann's eyes as he watched Hermione serving some English breakfast on the table. Didn't expect Hermione to make breakfast? I learned it from my mother when I was traveling. How about it? Hermione hung the apron on the wall and smiled proudly. Luann sat at the table looking at the soup with a good color and some bread and bacon, nodding with satisfaction. Looks good. It tastes great too. Hearing these two sentences, Hermione sat down opposite him happily. I have to say, Hermione's cooking skills are still very good. After a simple breakfast, Luann was ready to take the books and crucibles needed for the next semester in Diagon Alley in the Hermione district. The temperature was a little cloudy today, so Hermione picked up the green-bottomed wizard robe on the hanger as she went out. The height of the two people is somewhat different, and the robe is like a windbreaker when worn on her body. And Luann felt a little funny seeing this scene. A little Gryffindor witch in Slytherin robes looks so outrageous. Bell, bell. The wind chime at the door rang, and Luann locked the wooden door of the potion store. Then I was going to go to Mrs. Mokin's clothing store first to buy the wizard robes to wear next semester. After all, the two of them have grown a lot after the July 17th year. Costumes, cauldrons, herbs, and the last required books. Since there are elective courses after the 3rd grade, Hermione and Luann have already selected the elective courses before Easter, so the books that need to be purchased must also be purchased according to the elective courses. You also reported runes and divination? Seeing Hermione holding a thick stack of books, Luann reached out to help with a few. But after seeing the font above, he was slightly taken aback. Rune is another name for the rune, and some of the magic props made are engraved with this rune, which is the basic book of alchemy. But isn't Hermione not interested in alchemy? You must have reported runes and divination as well? Facing Lewin's doubts, the little witch showed a smile and said softly, "The meaning is very obvious. I will also be with you in the subject you are applying for." "But I didn't report as much as you did?" Luen glanced at the pile of books left in her arms and couldn't help saying, "Because my goal is to beat you." Saying that, Hermione chuckled, then turned to Pei. "Aren't you aiming for a ministerial position at the Ministry of Magic?" Luen shook his head helplessly. Thanks to him, Lockhart was sent to the Auror organization of the Ministry of Magic in order to pave the way for Miss Hermione. Speaking of which, he recently saw a story about Lockhart in the daily newspaper. What is not afraid of death, holding a wand has been rushing in the most dangerous position. It seems that Lockhart is running for the captaincy of the Auror division, and I don't know if he will succeed or not. However, with Lockhart's connections and fame, it is estimated that it is not a difficult task. Go, Mr. Geralt. Just as Lewin was thinking, Miss Granger had already stood at the door and shouted to him, "I'm coming." When Luen came back to his senses, he walked to the counter of Lehan bookstore, and when he was about to pay, he realized that Hermione had already paid for his book. He turned his head and glanced at the little witch wearing a Slytherin robe standing in the sun. The afterglow of Chow Wei poured on her body, and her brown curly hair seemed to be glowing. Hermione also noticed Lewin's gaze, and she slowly responded with a small smile on the corner of her mouth. Luen laughed. "Come on, let's go to the Leaky Cauldron to have something to eat." 35. He came over and grabbed the little witch's little hand and said softly, Hermione bowed her head shyly. No matter how familiar she is with Lewin, she always blushes involuntarily. After wandering around for an afternoon after dinner, Luen and the two returned to the potions shop in the evening. Amato, Animo, Animato, AF*CK Gus. After taking out all the things he bought today from the Shui space, Lewin took out his wand and chanted a spell at his heart. Hermione watched his movements curiously. She also thought about practicing about AF*CK Gus, but now the school is about to start, so she can only wait for the next vacation. The Monster Book of Monsters. This book looks like a spider. 35. Hermione sat on the sofa and took out one of the most peculiar books among the many books. The cover of the book appears to be made of animal fur, with 4 twitching eyes and spider-like legs. Looking at this book, she felt a little hair in her heart. This book is the textbook for the Conservation of Magical Creatures class. Luen walked over and looked at it and said, "It's not so much a book as it's a living, crazy animal. The book button next to it is its shackle. Don't undo it, or the books in this room will be torn to shreds." Hearing this, Hermione hurriedly shoved it into Lewin's arms. "Just put it in your closet. There are also quite a few books in my Shui space." Luen laughed and shook his head. However, the monster book was still pressed under the table by him. Tonight's dinner Miss Hermione volunteered, while Luen tidied up the little bedroom that belonged to her. After all, 2 people can't always sleep in the same bedroom. After eating, the two flipped through the textbooks to be studied this semester, and Miss Hermione felt a little dizzy after reading a lot of content. It's simple for Luen. He had learned these contents during the vacation last year. "Come on, it's time to sleep." Looking at Hermione with a small head, Lewin picked her up with his backhand. Some sleepy Hermione pushed her head into her arms subconsciously, as if she was looking for a suitable position. After putting Hermione on the bed in the room and covering it with a small blanket, he left. Lewin looked at the clock hanging on the wall. The time had come to 11:36. Tomorrow is about half an hour away. This is also 0.1, which means that the storm is coming soon in the room of requirement. Thinking of this, Luen locked the wooden door with a wand and then left the potion shop through Shui. In front of the room of requirement, Lewin stood in front of the portrait and walked back and forth 3 times, approaching a smooth door that opened from the wall. As soon as he stepped in, he felt a violent gust of wind, even mixed with some fine raindrops. The surrounding trees swayed in the wind, as if they were about to rise from the ground. Lightning flashed across the sky, and a storm was coming. Lu En hurriedly walked to the position he marked and opened the small medicine bottle buried in the soil with his hands. At this time, the liquid in the vial had already changed color. This is a vermilion potion. Inside the house upon request. It was already 12 o'clock, and it was already the third day of the coming storm. The howling wind was mixed with violent raindrops, and those sturdy trees were blown up and down at this time. Luin cast a protective spell to separate himself from the rain and the wind. He dug up the soil where the small medicine bottle was buried with his hands, and he picked up a bottle containing a scarlet liquid. Lu En frowned and put the glowing wand next to his ear, then looked at the bottle of AF**CK Gus special potion. The turbid liquid had turned vermilion at this time, and some azure magic could even be seen surging inside. With the sound of thunder just now, this bottle of potion was ready to be taken. Only one step away from success. I don't know what kind of animal it can become. Lu En thought expectantly. He took a deep breath and opened the cork of the vermilion potion. Azure blue magic particles instantly filled the air, as if they wanted to return to nature and disappeared in a blink of an eye. The surrounding storms are entangled, whizzing past like sharp knives. Without much hesitation, Lu En 13 picked up the wand in his ear and pointed its tip to the heart, chanting a spell. Amato, Animo, Animato, Animagus. The voice read out was directly annihilated in the sound of the storm. Looking at the small amount of potion in his hand, he drank it directly. As the vermilion liquid was drank, some wonderful changes gradually emerged. His whole body began to hurt, and under Luin's strong perception, his heart began to beat violently. Not for a while. The beating of the heart echoed, as if he now had two hearts in his body. Thump. Even if it was a pouring storm outside the magic protection, it still couldn't hide the heartbeat that was beating more slowly and louder. Lu En gritted his teeth, and now his forehead was covered with a layer of sweat, and the temperature of his body was heating up. He knew what that sudden heartbeat was. That's what AF**CK Gus transformed creatures have. What creature can have such a big heart? Elephant? Without leaving any time to think, the next moment, with the effect of the vermilion potion, a huge shadow of a creature that covered the sky appeared in Luin's mind. What kind of creature is this? Before Luin could judge, he felt a tear in his body, as if he was about to reshape this body. Pain filled his body. At this time, he had already felt a strange change in his body. Lu En forcefully opened his pale blue eyes and looked directly at his palm. This is a transformation of a magical creature. Pieces of golden scales have appeared on the originally white skin, and the palms have also become four palms similar to sharp claws. Any transformation of magical creatures will have unpredictable consequences. Thinking of the records in the book, The Origin of F***CK Gus, Luin's heart sank. From the shadowy figure in his mind and the sharp claws with scales, he knew that his F***CK Gus was definitely not an ordinary animal. Although he was a little flustered in his heart, once the transformation of AF***CK Gus started, it would not end. What we can do now is to put away those unnecessary emotions and watch this change carefully. With the passage of time, the storm became more and more violent. The sky was covered with clouds, and golden thunder and lightning flashed from time to time, and the thunder sounded. Boom! A crisp sound rang from Luin's ear, and he knew it was the broken shield used to keep out the storm. Bitter raindrops and a biting cold wind hit him. The originally golden hair was blown backwards, and a pair of pale blue eyes turned into golden vertical pupils. Luin's body is constantly getting bigger, and it has undergone earth-shaking changes from the inside to the outside. The original wizard's robe melted into the skin and turned into a golden scale. The surrounding trees became lower and lower, and in his vision, the tall old trees seemed to be small toys. The pain went away, and the changes in AF***CK Gus stopped. Lu En just feels like his head is full of confusion now, as if he is going to eat his original sanity. Was it influenced by the altered beast instinct? After suppressing those chaotic thoughts, he had time to observe his own changes. The originally tall trees turned into pieces of half-height weeds under his feet, and his arms also turned into sharp claws covered with golden scales, and arcs of electric arcs were wrapped around them. The howling wind hit Luan's body, and the wind that could have blown him away was painless at the moment. Roar! Looking at the cloudy sky, Luan subconsciously roared. Immediately afterwards, he saw red thunderbolts rolling in the sea of clouds, and these red thunderbolts were very conspicuous in the night sky. This is definitely not an effect that ordinary creatures can issue. What magical creature have I become? Luan looked down at his huge claws and had a guess in his heart. If nothing else. He slowly turned his head and saw a pair of sky-covering bone wings slammed open, with golden thunder light on them. With the swing of the wings, a huge gust of wind swept across a dense forest in an instant. Thunder Dragon King form. A low growl came out of his mouth, and Luan can also speak the human language with this F***ck Gus body. Unexpectedly, the transformation into a magical creature was successful, and it was still in the form of a thunder dragon. This is simply beyond Luan's expectations. The red thunder surging on the clouds overhead, a giant dragon shining with thunder light and with golden scales was standing proudly on the ground. At this moment, Luan seemed to have inexhaustible magic and power, and he even felt that his breath could easily destroy this space. Surging magic is surging in Luan's body. Just a slight exhalation was accompanied by a golden arc of thunder, sizzling. Is this the power of Thunder Dragon? Luan felt his **ck Gus form and whispered something incredible. This is the role brought by the Dragon Slayer crystal. Thinking of the Thunder Dragon crystal in his body, he probably guessed why he became the Thunder Dragon form. I don't know if I can change it back. After all, according to the records in that book, any attempt to become a magical creature will have more or less problems. Thinking of this, Luan took a deep breath. Now that he has completed the transformation of **ck Gus, he is about to change back from the form of a brontosaurus to a human again. Suppressing the chaotic thoughts in his mind, he began to imagine his original body in his mind. Fortunately, what Luan feared did not happen. The huge dragon body slowly became smaller, and the huge wings wrapped around thunder and lightning retracted into the back. The golden scales were replaced by a soaked wizard robe. The golden hair was messed up by the wind, and when he opened his eyes again, the originally indifferent golden pupils that looked like gods also changed back to light blue eyes. Protection. Luan took out his wand from the Shui space as soon as he returned to his human form, and with the appearance of an azure protective shield, the storm was immediately isolated from the outside. Call. Looking at the changed hands, a smile appeared on Luan's mouth. It worked. His **ck Gus can switch between brontosaurus and human form. If nothing else, he is the first ever successful shape-shifting magical creature in the entire wizarding world. However, after changing back to the original body, the thick, seemingly capable of destroying power completely disappeared. But Luan stretched out a finger, and the magic in his body began to surge. Lightning flashed at his fingertips. However, unlike the bright gold in the past, the thunder and lightning at this moment turned into red-black at some point. This is a kind of magic that suddenly appeared in his mind after turning into a thunder dragon. Red lightning. The power is much stronger than the golden lightning. On the 8th floor of Hogwarts. After coming out of the room of requirement, Luan was drenched like a chicken in soup. After drying his clothes and hair with his wand, he was ready to go back to take a shower. After all, there was a sticky feeling all over after the stormy scrubbing. As the whirlpool turned, Luan's figure disappeared into the silent castle. When he returned to the potion shop, it was already 3:30 in the morning. Didn't expect it to take so long. Luan hung the clothes on the hanger, then turned and walked into the bathroom. **ck Gus transformation is so exhausting, both physically and mentally. Even though Luan has turned back into a human body, those chaotic thoughts still remain in his mind. It looks like it will take him a while to get used to it. The morning sun is very bright. Wake up. There was a knock on the wooden door and Hermione frowned, brown eyes looking at the unresponsive room. "What's going on today?" You must know that in normal times, Lewin got up early at this time. And now it's about 10 o'clock and there is still no response. Will nothing happen? Looking at the locked door, Hermione took out her wand after thinking about it and pointed the tip at the doorknob. Araho cave open. Softly reciting the unlocking spell, with the crisp sound of clicking, the door lock was easily opened. Hermione opened the door gently and her little head poked in. The bright sunlight shone through the window and illuminated the whole room, and Lewin was lying on his back on the soft bed, still sleeping. "What time did you go to bed last night?" When she got to the bedside, Hermione couldn't help pinching her little boyfriend's nose and whispered to herself. As if feeling the touch on his nose or hearing the soft muttering, Lewin half opened his eyes. Light blue eyes reflected the little witch sitting beside him. "Good morning, Miss Granger." 35. Lewin said, reaching out and holding the small hand that was still pinching the tip of his nose, and yawned lightly. Although it is said that he has the physique of Thunder Dragon, after the torture last night, he is still a little sleepy. It's time for lunch. 35. Hermione looked at Lewin, who closed his eyes again and reminded helplessly. It was the first time she had seen Lewin so snooze. "Well, I'll get dressed." After Lewin finished speaking, he propped himself up and half sat up. "My whole body is sore." Miss Hermione, who was sitting beside her, was stunned, her brown eyes flashing with surprise. Since his clothes were soaked through last night, he went to bed in a daze after taking a shower, so he didn't wear pajamas as usual. "What are you looking at?" Lewin touched Miss Beaver's brown curly hair with his hand and asked with a smile. "No, it's nothing, I'll go downstairs and wait for you first." After Hermione faltered, she trotted out of the room. When leaving, Lewin could clearly see the little witch's ears turning red. Zhao de Zhao, after being together for so long, it's still so easy to be shy. After getting dressed, Lewin yawned and walked down the stairs. The confusion in my head is also much better, at least not as serious as yesterday. Inside the hall of the potion shop, Lewin sat opposite Miss Hermione with a rich lunch on the table. "These are all made by Hermione. What did you do last night?" Hermione took a small bite of the honey muffin and looked at Lewin with some confusion. It was the first time she had seen Lewin so sleepy. "Miss Granger, do you want to go on a date on the clouds today?" Lewin didn't answer the little witch's question directly, but asked back with a chuckle. "Going on a date on the clouds? Go to the clouds on a date?" Hermione was a little stunned when she heard this. She put the half-cut honey muffin on Lewin's plate and asked expectantly, "Are we going on a date with the broom today?" The little witch can already imagine the scene of watching the sunset together on the sea of clouds. It must be very romantic. "Broom?" Lewin chuckled and shook his head. "Not really." 95. The horse charm is still in Senior Tom's place, and if he rides on the broom to go on a date, it is estimated that he will be lying in Miss Beaver's arms. "What is that?" Hermione was a little puzzled. "If you don't need a broom, should you use a flying carpet?" Lewin took a bite of the honey-sprinkled muffin and chuckled without answering. This made Hermione pouted and stared at him with brown eyes dissatisfied. "Appetites every time." "Damn it, Gerald." Hermione stuck her tongue out at Lewin. Lewin didn't care and even took Miss Hermione's leftover muffins with a silver fork. "It's too sweet. Let him take care of the tooth decay." Those are my muffins," Hermione exclaimed, then looked at him angrily. "Like a small balloon. Very cute." "No way. 720 your lunch is delicious," Lewin said with a shrug. "By the way, this lunch table is worse than him, but it's not bad compared to the house elves." After lunch, Hermione changed into a set of clothes for going out, a black shirt and white skirt, with a curly hair and a high ponytail. The whole person looked very capable and beautiful. "Come on, let's go to a place first." With that said, Lewin very gentlemanly bent down and stretched out a hand. There is no way to directly use the form of AF*CK Gus in Diagon Alley. There are too many building doors here, and if one is not careful, several houses can be trampled. In addition, it is the main commercial street of the British wizarding world. If his F*CK Gus form is discovered, It is estimated that the brontosaurus will replace the picture of Sirius the next day. With a shallow smile, Hermione put her little hand in the hand of her little boyfriend. Then go. Luen chuckled, and his eyes turned into a scarlet kaleidoscope of sickles. As the sickle slowly turned, everything around it seemed to be twisted into a vortex shape. Before Hermione could ask, the two figures left the potion shop. When Hermione opened her eyes again, a vast green grass appeared in front of her eyes, and the fragrance of the grass smelled fresh with the breeze. Where is this place? The surrounding lawns and the English-style cottages where the smoke can be seen in the distance are all proof that this is not Diagon Alley anymore. At the feet of Hogwarts. Luen smiled and pointed behind him, and in the distance was a gorgeous castle perched on top of a hill. There is Hogwarts. The spatial coordinates of this place were marked by me when I had nothing to do last semester. Apparition? Hermione opened her eyes wide and looked at the familiar academy behind her in disbelief. The knowledgeable her mind immediately thought of this high-level magic spell. Almost. Luen hesitated and nodded. He didn't know how to explain the existence of Shui, and it was not bad to be regarded as apparition. Fresh air, green lawns, and blue skies. Hermione glanced at Luen, who had walked behind him, and threw himself into his arms with a smile. In this kind of weather and environment, it is really suitable to go out on a date. Then how are we going to get to the clouds? After turning around with Luen in her arms, Hermione raised her head from her arms and asked softly, "You must know that neither of them prepared a broom." AF*CK, Dab, Gus. Faced with the question, Luen raised the corner of his mouth and said a word. AF*CK, Gus? You succeeded? Hermione asked in disbelief, her eyes wide open. But there was no storm yesterday? Miss Hermione, as a scholar, knows the conditions of AF*CK Gus's practice. Diagon Alley was very quiet last night, and there was no rain on the street even in the morning. Not to mention the storm. I went to the House of Requirement last night and simulated a stormy forest from inside. Luen said it without concealment. Does the House of Requirement still have that capability? Hermione froze in Luen's arms. She has always regarded it as a cozy cabin for herself and Luen, and never knew it had such a function. Well, so I slept late last night. Luen touched the girl's curly hair and said, "Then your F*CK format is a flying animal." Hermione nodded knowingly, then asked with sparkling eyes, "Probably so. If Brontosaurus is also an animal." "You stay away first. My F*CK Gus is a little big." Speaking, Luen also opened a blur for himself to prevent accidentally hurting Miss Hermione. A bit large? Hermione wondered what kind of flying animal it was. But at this moment, she suddenly froze. I saw that the Luen in front of me had begun to change. Sharp claws covered with golden scales, gradually growing in size. Under Hermione's stunned gaze, a golden dragon covering the sky spread out a pair of wings entwined with lightning, and those golden pupils were filled with indifference and indifference. "Luen." Hermione looked at the behemoth in front of her and shouted in disbelief. "How is it, Miss Granger?" A low voice came from the dragon's throat. Luen controlled the surging magic power in his body and retracted the golden lightning on the surface into his body. He slowly stretched out a paw and placed it in front of Hermione, who was stunned in place. At this time, Miss Hermione hadn't regained her senses, and she subconsciously took a step back when she saw the sharp claw. Not from fear, but from biological instinct. Anyone who sees this huge dragon will tremble with fear. This is the coercion from the Thunder Dragon King. How is it, Miss Granger? A pair of huge golden vertical pupils stared at Miss Hermione, who subconsciously took a step back. Is your F*CK Gus a magical creature? Hermione couldn't help but exclaimed after confirming that the huge golden dragon in front of her was Luen. She touched the outstretched claws with her own little hands, and the sharp claws flashed with lightning, making Hermione go numb. She had never seen the creature Luen turned into in any book. It's better to go ahead and talk about it. 35. Luen said softly. Although the voice subconsciously softened, the Thunder Dragon's body is very large, so the sound it makes is like a low roar. Uh-huh. Hermione rubbed her numb palms and stood cautiously on the outstretched claws. Remember to cast a protective spell on yourself. Luan reminded. All right. As an azure light enveloped Hermione, he waved his wings behind him. The whistling wind blew up under the wings, and the surrounding grass was blown out in waves. As the two hind legs leaped vigorously, the wings slammed into the air. Boom, one by one. Under the action of the giant force, the ground was stepped out into a huge pothole, and the soil was scattered everywhere. And that behemoth has already flew straight into the blue sky, and a pair of golden wings flipped from time to time. It was getting farther and farther from the ground. Luan is also the first time to fly in his AF*CKGUS form. The wings behind him are natural and very easy to control. Hermione, holding her paws, stared blankly at the distant scenery. So shocking. With the speed getting faster and faster, it just broke through the clouds in the next moment, and the huge wings made the Thunder Dragon's body stagnate in midair. The soft sunlight made Luan narrow his eyes, and he turned away. Underfoot is a vast expanse of white clouds, undulating like a wave. It's incredible, Hermione whispered softly. Whether it is the scenery of the scene or the Luan behind him. She looked back curiously with brown eyes at the giant dragon with golden scales. Huge, majestic, golden scales look very noble. Did your magical creature become a dragon? Among the creatures Miss Hermione knew, only those dragons had such a size. It's not a fire dragon, it's a thunder dragon. Luan said. A crackling golden thunder and lightning appeared on the other paw, which was very conspicuous against the azure blue background. Brontosaurus. This involves the blind spot of Miss Know-It-All, who has never heard of such magical creatures in the world. Not even Fantastic Beasts has any records. You can understand it as a fantasy creature. Luan thought about it and said, after all, Thunder Dragon is not a creature that exists in this world. The long tail cut the clouds in half. Luan and Hermione flew slowly above the sea of clouds. Resting on a thick layer of cloud, no wizard would notice the two of them. Said to be a date, but in fact it was always Hermione who was asking curious questions, and Luan was in charge of answering. Dusk has come. The dim sun hangs far on the skyline, and it seems that it will fall in the next moment, and the surrounding clouds are rendered a fiery red. At this time, Hermione was already sitting on the top of his head, with a pair of blurred eyes looking at the clouds in the sky. It was the first time she watched the sunset from above the clouds. The same goes for Luan. One person and one dragon soared quietly in the sea of clouds. As the sunset slowly fell, Thunder Dragon's huge body also began to slowly descend, and the sea of clouds made waves. A golden figure began to descend from the sky. After chatting for an entire afternoon, the two returned to the vicinity of Hogwarts. Boom, one by one. The huge weight crushed the ground. Luan slowly lowered his long-horned head and let the little witch go down first. Hermione hopped on her nose and landed on the ground, looking at the breezy lawn around her, slightly relieved. Although the scenery on the clouds is very good, I always feel a little uneasy in my heart. Ask for flowers 0. Sure enough, the ground is comfortable. He-Chien thought with a smile, and then she walked slowly to Luan, who hadn't raised her head yet. Under his suspicious gaze, Miss Granger reached out and touched her lying head. Some stubborn. After all, a dragon-like a creature has no hair, so it cannot be hugged and rubbed like a kitten. Luan let out a helpless laugh, and then returned to his original shape through AF*CKGUS. Under Hermione's wide-eyed gaze, the golden scales gradually transformed into a wizard's robe. The imagined scene did not appear, and the little witch shook her head in disappointment. What do you think? Luan walked over and patted her little head amusedly. 0. I always feel that Hermione seems to be very active recently. Let's go, it's time to go back to dinner. Luan pulled up Hermione's little hand. As the whirlpool turned again, all that was left was a mess of ground. Several huge potholes remained in the ground, surrounded by splashes of soil. And in the forbidden forest at Hogwarts. Hagrid's eyes widened as he stared at the empty sky, and the iron bucket in his hand fell to the ground, but he didn't know it. What did he see just now? A giant dragon with scales as bright as gold. Hagrid, who was familiar with any magical creature, would have sworn he had never seen a dragon of this breed. It does not belong to any books and records. That's a new breed. Hagrid murmured in a low voice, with excitement and trembling in his voice. Headmaster Dumbledore, I have found a new golden dragon. 95. Don't bother to feed the small animals in the Forbidden Forest. This must be told to Dumbledore. It's very likely that the last thunderbolt in the Forbidden Forest was caused by it. It doesn't matter if it's a new breed. Hagrid just wants Dumbledore to catch it and not let it endanger those cute little wizards. Inside the Akali Potion store in Diagon Alley, Lu-En, who is eating strawberry cake, is talking and laughing about life with Hermione. He didn't even know he was being targeted by Hagrid. Apparition. With a melodious sound, Lu-En soon felt that the surrounding space began to squeeze against him, as if it were very repulsive. However, the squeezing feeling disappeared in the next moment. In the open space not far away, the surrounding space produced a sense of tearing, like a vortex of divine might. Immediately afterwards, Lu-En's figure appeared in that place. How did Lu-En master apparate so quickly? Sirius, who was standing next to Hermione, had a look of surprise in his eyes. This was definitely the fastest wizard he had ever seen practicing apparition. It's just an apparition, I've learned it long ago. The dark-eyed senior Tom laughed disdainfully. How could Geralt learn so quickly without his teaching? Just kidding. At this 720 time, Lu-En came over from a distance. So far, he has mastered apparition. It has to be said that the transferability of this spell is still very strong, as long as there is a purpose in mind. Teach me at school, said the studious Hermione, immediately hugging his arm. No problem. Lu-En chuckled and nodded. There are only a few days left in the current holiday season, and the start of school is coming soon. And recently, Sirius has been wandering the streets of Diagon Alley just to catch a glimpse of Harry Potter, who he has never seen before. But so far it has not been found. This is for you. Tom took a sip of the herbal tea from the cup and threw Sirius' long-coveted horse charm to Lu-En. Now he doesn't need the spell anymore. Because of the development of this holiday, more than half of Nocturne Alley was completely in Tom's hands. The werewolves were also very convinced of him, and some of the werewolves who were loyal and reliable were cursed by the horse talisman. For those werewolves with other minds, they are controlled by the wolf poison potion brewed by Lu-En. As expected of Senior Tom, his work efficiency is as convincing as ever. Lu-En took the horse charm and hung it around his neck with a smile. If you could give me 4 hours of sleep a day, I might be grateful to you, Geralt. 55. Tom sneered. Sleeping only 3 hours a day, if it wasn't for his immortality, he would have died suddenly from overwork by now. Then you should continue to hate me. Lu-En shook his head and said. Without letting Senior Tom work 24 hours a day without rest, he was already looking at the face of the diary. Go, Miss Granger. Holding Hermione, who was curiously listening to the conversation, Lu-En was about to leave Nocturne Alley. If Hermione hadn't been following him all the time, he wouldn't have brought the little witch to Nocturne Alley. By the way, the Aurors will come to check here in a few days. You and Sirius pay attention. At the corner, Lu-En suddenly remembered something and reminded him. Just yesterday, Lockhart, the captain of the Auror organization, sent him a letter. Said to let him temporarily close the potion shop, because the Aurors will have some big moves in the past few days. Thinking of this, Lu-En felt that it was a good idea to insert Lockhart into the Ministry of Magic. If something happens, I know to report here. Diagon Alley. Inside Akali's potion shop. Jingle Tilde Operator. As the wind chimes hanging on the wooden door rang, the two pushed the door and walked in. Just sitting on the sofa, Hermione couldn't help but ask curiously. Why should that Senior Tom pay attention to the Auror organization? Sirius, she knew, was a well-known Azkaban fugitive after all. However, it was the first time the little witch had met Senior Tom of the Snake House. What impresses her most is the pair of jet black eyes. Senior Tom is doing black business in Nocturne Alley, or nothing is illegal in Nocturne Alley. Lu-En explained softly. Yes? Seeing Lu-En's hand touching the tip of her nose, Hermione couldn't help narrowing her eyes, and a smile slowly emerged from the corner of her mouth. "Luan, you big liar." "Luan," Hermione whispered. Luan tilted his head suspiciously, but as soon as he turned his head, Miss Granger threw herself on the sofa. "You're here again, 55. Luan opened his eyes wide and subconsciously hugged the little witch with both hands. "Who told you to lie to me?" Lockhart's message is still accurate. After about 3 days, the Auror organization came to Diagon Alley and Nocturne Alley. So, someone at the Ministry of Magic noticed Tom and the others? Sitting behind the counter, Luan couldn't help asking. "Tom, you're talking about the Dark Wizard Chief who attacked Selwyn Manor?" Wearing a gorgeous Lockhart, he played with 10 brand new magic rings on his fingers and asked in a puzzled tone. He is the captain of the Auror who led the search today, so he came to this potion shop ahead of time to find Luan to update the ring. After all, it is still very dangerous in the Auror organization. If it weren't for his immortal body, he would have died many times, and even 2 rings would be left. But it was this spirit of always being on the front line that made Lockhart successful in his bid for the position of Auror captain. "Yes, I am an undead like you." Luan nodded and chuckled. Today, Miss Hermione went shopping to buy ingredients and happened to be staggered from Lockhart and the others. "Oh, like me?" Lockhart looked up, a schadenfreude grin on his lips. "I don't know which hapless one was resurrected. Let's go, I'll take you 0.1 to get acquainted." Luan's mouth twitched, then got up and walked out. "Then I'm looking forward to it." Lockhart shrugged. When he entered Nocturne Alley, Luan discovered that many Aurors were inspecting some shops. Not even the Borkin store was spared. "Captain Lockhart." Several Aurors noticed this and greeted them with smiles. Well done." 35. Lockhart seemed to like the title, winking at Luan as if to show off his current status. "You did a good job." Luan chuckled. After all, as long as Lockhart climbs up, it means that Miss Granger's ministerial position is one step closer. Hearing Luan's compliment, Lockhart's smiling mouth twitched. Yes, his current efforts are all paving the way for this little blonde wizard in front of him. But it feels good too. Lockhart looked at the 10 rings in his hand, and a smile twitched at the corners of his mouth. At least he now has an undead body and a powerful magic spell. "Go, Tom. They should be in the northwest corner." According to the information given by Morris, Luan took the Auror team behind him to the northwest. There are not a few Aurors along the way. Luan reckoned he would have been questioned several times without Lockhart behind him. After all, no normal wizard would come and hang out in Nocturne Alley. Northwest corner of Nocturne Alley. This is a residential area, and the surrounding houses look very run down. Luan knocked on a wooden door, and Lockhart, who followed behind, looked around curiously. This was the first time in his history that he had come to the depths of Nocturne Alley. Who made him a famous writer before, if he was photographed in Nocturne Alley, his reputation would be lost. Creak. The sour sound made Lockhart cover his ears. The old wooden door was opened with a crack, and the door was opened by a middle-aged wizard who had lifted the curse of the werewolf. When he saw that standing outside was the blonde wizard who was walking very close to their master, he immediately opened the door. "Come in, Mr. Gerald." "Hey, it's so dirty here, it's like a sewer." 35. As soon as he stepped through the door, Lockhart couldn't help but mutter something behind Luan. "There are werewolves all around, so be quiet if you don't want to be beaten," Luan reminded. "Werewolf?" Lockhart narrowed his eyes, a smile on his lips. "They can't kill me." There was confidence and a slight disdain in his tone. To be precise, no one in this world can kill Lockhart except Luan. "Don't be so confident, you may be sealed one day." 39. Luan chuckled and shook his head. Although it can't kill these filthy reincarnations, it can seal them all up. But so far, he has not seen the magic spell with the sealing effect in the books he has studied. Not seeing it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. After stepping on the creaking stairs to the second floor, I saw Senior Tom, who was sitting at the table busy with his work. And Sirius was lying on the sofa bored looking at a copy of the Daily Prophet. If it weren't for a large group of Auror searching outside, he would have gone to Diagon Alley to find his godson by now. "Good afternoon, you two," Lewin greeted with a smile. "Good afternoon." Sirius put down the daily newspaper in his hand and yawned somewhat boringly. In recent months, his photos have been the headlines of the daily newspapers, and there is nothing to see. Lockhart, who was following behind him, glanced in the direction of the voice and was stunned when he saw the figure lying on the sofa. "Sirius Black," Lockhart muttered under his breath. Lying on the sofa must be Sirius Black. This face was on the front page of the daily newspaper for 2 months, and the last news of Lockhart's promotion to Auror Captain didn't knock him down. And Sirius is now their main target for Aurors. Lockhart and the others were looking for him every day. Didn't expect to see it here. Sirius felt Lockhart's gaze and frowned slightly. "I always thought he looked weird. If he hadn't followed Lewin, he'd be the first to strike now." "Why, didn't you accompany your little girlfriend at home?" Tom didn't look up at Lewin, who was now documenting the various areas of Nocturne Alley. Although he didn't want to do it, his body didn't listen to his control. "I brought the captain of the Auror organization to let you know. 99. If something happens in the future, we can help each other." Saying that, Lewin pointed to Lockhart, who was smiling behind him. "Gilderoy Lockhart, the Auror captain the other day." Yes, his body is the same as yours. Captain Auror, and the same body as him. Still being played with the poor puppet of the soul by Lewin?" Tom looked up at the gorgeous blonde man. His eyes did not become pitch black, but azure blue. It appears to have used a transfiguration or confusion charm. "Captain Auror, 35. Sirius sat up abruptly, staring at Lockhart with wide eyes. "Even the captain of the Auror is from Lewin's side? Nice to meet you, Azkaban fugitive." Lockhart held out a hand to Sirius with a smile. He didn't expect Sirius to be on Lewin's side either. "Hello." After hesitating for a while, Sirius held the hand that was stretched out, his tone a bit complicated. Lewin's power development is really beyond his imagination. It turns out that not only Nocturne Alley, but even the Ministry of Magic has been. 720 thought of this, and Sirius looked at Lewin, who was chuckling beside him, with complicated eyes. "This third-grade little wizard is so scary. Tom Riddle, as much as you are Gerald's puppet." Tom nodded. "Puppet?" Sirius was stunned for a moment. He knew that the next conversation was not something he could relate to. "You guys talk. I'll go to Morris to discuss something." After he finished speaking, he pushed the door and went downstairs. "You were also killed by Lewin and then resurrected?" Staring into those dark eyes, Lockhart stopped pretending. His azure blue eyes also became the same color, with black whites and gray pupils. "Killed by him?" Tom froze for a moment, then looked at Lockhart sarcastically. "I'm not like you." It turned out to be the poor ghost killed by Gerald. Lockhart heard the sarcastic tone, and he frowned at the also resurrected puppet. "How do you feel about being superior? You may have heard me by another name." 55. Seeing that Lockhart was somewhat dissatisfied, Tom shook his head and said, "What name?" Lockhart looked for the name Tom Riddle in his memory, but had no impression at all. "Voldemort." "Voldemort." The corners of Tom's mouth were raised, and he said a name that no one dared to mention in the British wizarding world. "The cursed name." "Mystery Man." Lockhart's eyes widened, and he couldn't help exclaiming. His dark eyes stared at the handsome young man sitting behind the table with a dazed expression. "Voldemort." Lockhart really never thought about hearing this name after more than 10 years of precipitation. "Why, you look surprised." Tom put down the quill in his hand and glanced at Lewin, who was sitting on a chair with black tea out of the corner of his eye. "If I'm not Voldemort, how could I possibly be used by Gerald?" Tom knew that the reason Lewin brought him back to life was because he would become Voldemort in the future. After all, no one will raise a waste. "Impossible. The mysterious person looks different from yours." Lockhart shook his head quickly, unable to keep a smile on his face. He was indeed Voldemort, or rather Voldemort 50 years ago. 39. Lewin said softly, taking a sip of black tea. As his words fell, Lockhart completely froze in place. The young man in front of him is really Voldemort? Lockhart opened his mouth, only to find himself unable to say anything. What can he say? Now Voldemort, like him, has become Lewin's sole-playing object, a puppet who can't control himself. Thinking of this, Lockhart subconsciously glanced at the blonde wizard who was drinking tea. Didn't expect even Voldemort to escape his control? Really scary wizard. Okay, let's talk about it. 5. Luen glanced at the watch in his hand. It was 12:30. The little witch probably bought the ingredients long ago and went back. After all, Lockhart is also an Auror captain. You know how to use it, Senior Tom. Lewin asked with a chuckle. Understood. You should go back quickly. Tom narrowed his eyes and drove him straight away. He really didn't want to see Lewin's face. It was uncomfortable, but unable to move. With a soft creaking sound, Luen walked away slowly. Only Lockhart and Tom were left in the room. Looking at Tom's equally handsome face, Lockhart felt a little numb inside. This is Voldemort. Killing him could not have imagined that one day he would do things with Voldemort. Don't be so nervous, I won't kill you again. 9. What's more, now you are also immortal, right? Tom looked at Lockhart, who was frozen in place, and chuckled softly. After leaving Nocturne Alley, Lewin returned to the potions shop in Diagon Alley. The door that was locked when leaving was already opened. There was no doubt that Miss Hermione had returned. Jingle. The wind chime on the wooden door rang softly, and Lewin pushed the door and walked in. A pair of pale blue eyes quickly saw the little witch who was writing a letter on the table. You're back. Hearing the sound of the doorbell, Hermione turned her head and glanced at Luen, who was approaching, with a smile on her lips. Her long brown curly hair tied in a high ponytail behind her also swayed with the movement. Good afternoon, sweet little witch. Luen sat beside Miss Granger and wrapped a hand around her waist. The scent of jasmine tickled the nose. You changed your name again. Hermione smiled and squeezed his cheek. It's really cute. Luen touched her little head and couldn't help rubbing it. Wait, I'll finish this letter first. Hermione removed her hand from her head and picked up the quill on the table. The letter was sent by her to the Grangers, as the start of the school year was coming up soon and she would have to stay home for a few days, if nothing else. After finishing the letter and putting it in the envelope, Hermione handed it to the white owl who was waiting. All right. After watching the owl fly out of the window, Miss Granger nodded in satisfaction. By the way, I saw Harry at the Leaky Cauldron this morning. Hermione said suddenly. Harry? Why is he at the Leaky Cauldron? Lewin asked with some doubts. He said he ran away from home yesterday, and he was taken to the Leaky Cauldron by the night bus. 99. Should we tell Sirius the news? Remembering that Sirius had been using the form of AF*CK Gus to find Harry in Diagon Alley recently, Hermione couldn't help but said with some sympathy. Sirius? Lewin thought for a while and nodded. Then I'll go tell Sirius. You go and call Harry here. 35. To say that the safest place in Diagon Alley is undoubtedly his potions shop. After all, there was an Auror Captain Lockhart on the back door. Hermione nodded. The trace of Sirius is still easy to find. After all, when he has nothing to do, he's squatting in front of Lehan Bookstore all day long. Because every new wizard has to buy books for the next semester. A black dog was crawling in a shady place, with golden beast pupils paying attention to the passing crowd. Soon a shadow enveloped him. Luen? Seeing the familiar handsome face, Sirius raised his head in confusion. I don't know what he's doing. Harry will be at the potion shop in a while. Are you going? 35. Hearing this sentence, Sirius immediately froze. And on the other side. You mean, I have an Azkaban godfather at large? 35. Harry, who hadn't seen each other for a long time, was told the news by Hermione before he had time to catch up. That wanted man is my godfather? Harry was a little bewildered. Zhao Liao's, he had also seen that daily newspaper, and the attendant of the night bus told him that Sirius was the most vicious criminal. There has been a crazy act of blowing up a street. Didn't you say Sirius was wronged? 39. Hermione reluctantly explained it again. She didn't realize that Harry still had the habit of selectively listening to people. Wait until the door of the potions shop to judge. Harry's eyes were still a little confused. With the sound of the wind chimes, Hermione pushed the door and walked in, followed by Harry. Harry Potter? 35. A hoarse and excited voice sounded. When Harry looked up, he saw the man on the wanted list. He subconsciously took a step back. Look, he doesn't even want to call Sirius godfather. 35. Lu En, who was drinking tea, said softly to the girl next to him. Sirius Black? Harry looked at the man in front of him and took a step back subconsciously. As for this man, he had heard of it before he came to the Leaky Cauldron. A fugitive from Azkaban who once blew up an entire street with a spell. Harry Potter. Sirius Black noticed that he stepped back half a step, and he hurriedly raised his hand to indicate that there was no malice. I know your father and mother. We are best friends. He stared at Harry, who had a face similar to James and who had inherited Lily's emerald green eyes, and it was difficult to suppress his excitement. He and the Potters were so similar. It was like seeing James when he was a student. Harry looked at Sirius with complicated eyes, opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. In desperation, he could only turn his head to look at his two friends. He really couldn't imagine that the man in front of him would actually be his godfather. For Harry, who had lived with the Dursleys since birth, family affection was simply too much to hope for. Especially after running away from home the other day. Little Sirius 720 Star was wrongfully imprisoned. Don't be so defensive. Lu En said to a nervous Harry. Perhaps you can try calling him Godfather. Godfather. Harry looked at Sirius and let out a soft cry. Although the sound was not loud, it was very clear in this quiet potion shop. Harry, may I call you that? Sirius walked over and squatted down, trying to meet Harry's emerald green eyes as much as possible. Did you receive the birthday present I gave you? He grinned. It was the newest broom he had specially bought after borrowing a huge sum of money from Lu En. Birthday present? Harry remembered a large gift box he suddenly received half a month ago, and his eyes lit up. That firebolt is. That's right, I gave that one. Seeing the joy on Harry's face, Sirius laughed too. With the gift as the premise, the two finally opened a dialogue. Sirius seemed to be at his own house, taking out some food and tea from the kitchen and placing it in front of Harry. Why is he so skilled? Dab, Miss Hermione couldn't help asking. Before you came, Sirius was sleeping in the living room. Lu En stroked the little girl's brown curly hair and explained softly. His pale blue eyes looked at the fiery Sirius and Harry chatting over there, and the corners of his mouth twitched. So good. Without his intervention, it is estimated that Sirius is still eating mice in the sewers and living a life of fear. Lu En and Hermione did not bother the two chatting on the sofa. The two of them carefully discussed the knowledge of divination behind the counter. This subject is completely based on talent, and even most of the problems Lu En can't understand. As for Miss Hermione, she was staring blankly at the Book of Divination. Apparently she doesn't have the talent for that either. The bright sunlight outside the window shone, and the entire potion shop was not hot but warm, which was very suitable for reading and chatting. Harry, were you bullied at Hogwarts? Sirius sat opposite Harry and asked in a hoarse voice. Being bullied? Malfoy's face came to Harry's mind for the first time, but then he thought of the scene where he sacrificed himself to protect himself in the Forbidden Forest. Thinking of this, Harry got a little complicated, but he still shook his head. I lived well at Hogwarts and made a lot of friends. But I heard Lu En mention Severus Snape was targeting you in potions class? Speaking of Snape, Sirius' eyes narrowed. Professor Snape, I don't know why he keeps deducting points from me sometimes. It's like, it seems that I don't like you. Before Harry could finish speaking, Sirius interrupted him. After all, Lupin and James, your father, bullied Snape when we were at Hogwarts. Sirius sneered. I think he wants revenge on you. Lu En raised his head subconsciously when he heard this. Did the quartet deliberately not mention Peter Pettigrew's name? That's right, after all, for that timid and abominable mouse, Sirius could not wait to swallow him alive. Did this actually happen? Harry's eyes widened, now finally knowing why Snape was targeting him. Unexpectedly, this is actually what his father left behind. Harry looked at the sneering Sirius with a complex face, not knowing what to say for a while. There is really no problem with the father's debt to the son. However, sometimes Snape is nice to Harry. At this time, The dizzy little witch couldn't help but retorted for Snape. Oh, when? Sirius was a little stunned when he heard this. How badly Snape was bullied by them back then. How could he still be nice to Harry? He won't believe it if you kill him. That's what Harry turned into Harry after drinking the potion. Professor Snape gave Harry a passing grade. When the words fell, Harry couldn't help covering his face. It's over. This thing that I don't want to mention is exposed in front of the Godfather. Lewin looked at Miss Hermione, who was dizzy, and pinched her cheek with a smile. Is this dizzy from studying divination? Harley? Sirius looked at Harry opposite him with doubts. Miss Granger was talking about, what potion? Well, a potion without a name that Lewin brewed. Seeing that the matter was revealed, Harry simply did not hide it and directly took out a small bottle of Nianguaquin from his pocket. That's it, drinking it can change a person's gender. Change people's gender? And this magic potion? Sirius looked at the crystal-clear medicine bottle in disbelief, then turned to look at Lewin, who was working with his little girlfriend. He made it. There seems to be nothing wrong with it. Can you take it? I want to see the effect. Sirius looked straight into Harry's emerald green eyes and had a bad guess in his heart. 1. Harry hesitated before agreeing to the request. He had decided to never use it again, but who made Sirius his only relative? With a drop of Nianguaquin was drink. His short hair quickly grew longer, and his face became feminine. After seeing what Harry looked like at this time, Sirius couldn't help but grit his teeth. Severus, you're so heartless. Seeing Harry, who looked like Lily, Sirius gnashed his teeth. He finally knew why Snape gave Harry a passing grade. With this face, it is strange not to give it. What's the matter? Harry touched the tip of his nose suspiciously and looked at the excited Sirius with some ignorance. No, nothing. Sirius shook his head, not telling Harry what had happened before. It's better not to let him know too much now. Yes. Harry looked suspiciously at his godfather. It always felt like he was hiding something. Harry returned to the leaky cauldron as evening fell, because her owl is still waiting to be fed. And Sirius also returned to Nocturnally because there was still something to do on Tom's side. There are 2 more Hermione and Lewin left in Nuota's potion shop. Dinner is ready. 35. Hermione called upstairs. I'm coming. Lewin dried her wet blonde hair, put on a pair of pajamas, and walked off. Since Miss Granger came to the potion shop, she has basically given her the task of cooking every day. Cooking is also getting better every day. After dinner, the 2 of them sat in the rest area as usual to study various knowledge. As the lights went out, small azure constellations emerged from the wand in midair. This is the best way to teach horoscope divination. Hermione, who was still a little drowsy, opened her eyes and became more refreshed. As the meaning of each constellation was explained, she also took a feather pen and carefully recorded it, listening to Lewin's explanation with serious expression. With the slow rotation of the constellations, the time also came to the night. Good night, my dear little witch. Lewin and Hermione hugged gently and then went back to their room to sleep. When he closed the door and was about to go to bed, there was a knock on the door behind him. Is there something wrong with Hermione? He thought suspiciously. As the door opened again, Hermione was standing outside holding a quilt. Due to the fact that he had just taken a shower, his brown curly hair looked wet and had a different kind of beauty. What's the matter? Lewin asked suspiciously. After a period of study, it is almost 12 o'clock now. You know, Miss Granger usually goes to bed very early. I'm going back tomorrow. Hermione looked at Lewin's handsome face, a light red on her cheeks. Are you going back tomorrow? Lewin was taken aback for a moment, then he remembered the letter Hermione sent to the Grangers today. It seemed that she had indeed heard something from Miss Hermione. But Lewin looked at Hermione, who was holding the quilt, and the corners of his mouth slowly turned up. He got it. So, why are you holding the quilt? He deliberately joked, with a hint of a smile in his tone. Hermione heard what he meant, her brown eyes half squinting. Nasty, and pretending not to know. I'm afraid of the dark. The little witch gritted her teeth and said, Well, I thought you would say your intentions directly. Lewin chuckled and turned sideways, letting Miss Hermione walk in with the quilt in her arms. But that's a good reason. The lights in the bedroom were already off, and only the silky moonlight outside the window provided some light. As the door closed again, Lewin took the wand on the table and cast a cleansing spell on the wet brown curls. In the blink of an eye, the wet curls became fluffy. Fortunately, I prepared a big enough bed. 35. After Lewin said a word, he found that Hermione had run to the inside of the bed with his quilt, just like in the room of responsiveness. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but laugh. The originally shy Miss Beaver became more and more active. Okay, get ready to sleep. After speaking, Lewin lay flat on the outside and slowly closed his eyes. But before she could sleep for a while, Hermione gently nudged her cheek with her finger. Flowers 0. Lewin, are you asleep? She said softly. 66. Lewin looked at the girl who was approaching. A pair of pale blue eyes met her. Before he could react, he saw Miss Hermione hug him sideways. Although it was summer, fortunately there was a spell in the room, so neither of them could feel the heat, and it was even a little cold. By the moonlight cast by the window, Lewin could clearly see the little witch's blushing cheeks, like an apple. Makes you want to take a bite. What are you doing? The next morning, Hermione pulled the suitcase and ran. 0. The 5 days before the start of school has passed quickly. Lewin first went to Nocturne Alley to find Tom and Sirius and ordered some things, and then packed all the luggage to bring in advance. Day 5. That's the start date of Hogwarts. This year, a group of unfamiliar little wizards passed over the pillar with a hidden door in front of King's Cross Station. And Lewin is waiting for the promised Miss Hermione. Happy new term, Lewin. The Weasley family came to the station with Harry. Good morning, Fred. Lewin greeted with a smile. Every year when the school starts, I always see them for the first time. Waiting for Miss Granger again? Fred did not see the inseparable little witch and immediately smiled knowingly. Then let's go. Well, see you at the Hogwarts dinner. 55. After saying goodbye to the Weasley family, Hermione finally arrived with a large suitcase. Goodbye. After saying goodbye to the Grangers, Hermione trotted to Lewin with the suitcase. Come on, the train will start in a while. After packing up the big suitcase, Hermione pulled her little boyfriend and ran into the pillar with a smile. The train to Hogwarts is slowly stopping in the train station. A new semester begins. 1. King's Cross Station. At platform 9 3/4. The incoming first-year wizards were bustling with anticipation and curiosity on their faces. The exclusive train to Hogwarts was parked quietly on one side of the platform at this time. After Lewin placed Hermione's salute into the Camui space, the two crossed the crowd and boarded the black and red-hued steam train. Since it was late to get on the train, there were people in the front carriages, so we could only find a seat at the back of the train. Lewin, Hermione? At this time, a voice came from behind Lewin. When I looked back, it was Harry and Ronald who were on target. The two of them were standing there with their large suitcases. Didn't you two get in the car early? Lewin asked with some doubts. July 20th, why haven't you found the carriage yet? The carriage was too full, so Harry and I came out to find a room. Ronald, whose hair was a little messy, said helplessly. Fred and George and Ginny are just 3 people. If you add the 2 of them, it becomes 5 people. A car can seat up to 4 people. In desperation, the 2 of them had to come out and find another room. Didn't you two find the carriage? Harry asked. We're going to look at the back of the car. Hermione raised her eyebrows and said softly. She didn't want to be in the same car with the others, because then she wouldn't be able to do too much with Lewin. Hey, there's only one person in this compartment. At this time, Ronald, who found a compartment in front, shouted to Lewin and the others. Lewin took Hermione's hand and walked over to take a look. In the inner corner was a man sleeping with a shabby coat over his head and a suitcase belonging to him on the luggage rack, with a name engraved on it. Remus John Lupin. Why don't you two come in? 35. Ronald, who put down his luggage, questioned Lewin, who was still standing outside the door. And Hermione, who was standing next to Lewin, half squinted his eyes and tugged at his sleeve. Forget it, the 5 people are still a bit crowded, and Hermione and I will go to the back to find out. 5. Feeling the movement of the sleeve, Lu-en instantly understood the meaning of the little witch. That's fine. Glancing at the young couple, Ronald didn't say anything. After all, the 5-person carriage is really crowded. Perhaps the number of little wizards this year is a bit large, and there are more or less people in the carriages in front. Finally found an empty carriage at the end of the train. Lu-en sat near the window, and Hermione sat across from him. He put some magazines and snacks on the table from the showway space to pass the boring time during the trip. The blue field scenery outside the window is really beautiful, but no matter how much you look at it, you will get tired. By the way, the frog cub went on a trip a month before the start of school. No photo has been sent to him yet. I don't know which world to go to again. After all, frog cubs have a wide range of friends, and there are many kinds of them, including snakes, electric mice, and even robotic cats. The man who was sleeping just now was Professor Lupin. Did you see that? Hermione picked up a Momotaro rice ball, took a nibble, and said to Lu-en. The meticulous Miss Granger saw the name engraved on the old suitcase at once, and it just so happened that they had a professor named Lupin next semester. I know, he's the new dark magic defense professor. Lu-en took out the Hogwarts opening letter and placed it on the table. The position and origin of Professor Lupin have been introduced above. These are to reassure the parents of the little wizards. Professor Lupin? If I remember correctly, he was also a werewolf. It's also about him that Sirius wants to get the horse charm. Thinking of Sirius, Lu-en didn't let him come to Hogwarts with him. One is that Tom needs help, and the other is that he doesn't want the mouse to escape in advance. Among the 4 predators, they are all familiar with each other's AF***CK Gus form. Except for Lupin, because he's a werewolf. This semester will be serving as a professor of defense of dark magic. Hermione looked at the contents of the letter and whispered, "It's dark magic defense class again." The little witch couldn't help but say, "This course basically changes a professor every semester." Thinking of this, Hermione couldn't help thinking of the curse that Lu-en had said about this position. "Lu-en, why are you saying Lockhart is okay?" Hermione propped her chin up, her brown eyes looking at him smartly. "Gerald. Probably because of his early resignation." 99. Lu-en froze for a moment, then chuckled. Lockhart is even worse than Professor Quirrell, at least the other beheaded has rested, and Lockhart was resurrected and made a puppet by him. As the train slowly traveled on the rails, the bright sunlight outside the window was replaced by the setting sun. "Well, it feels like it's going to rain outside." Hermione rested her head on Lu-en's shoulder and looked out the window with hazy eyes. Halfway through the train, the little witch ran to his side, and she couldn't help falling asleep when she got close. "Just woke up now." There was some bright sunlight outside the window, and it was covered with a cloud of clouds. At this time, it looked dark, and the shrouded fog made it impossible to see any scenery. Awake. Lu-en saw the magazine in his hand on the table, and pinched the little witch's cheek, which was still a little sleepy. A little cold." Miss Granger nodded slightly. Feeling the cold air around her, she subconsciously leaned into Lu-en's arms. The temperature of the entire cabin did drop. Lu-en looked at the dark sky outside the window with a thoughtful expression. As a pair of scarlet sickle kaleidoscopes emerged, he clearly saw those creatures hiding behind the clouds. They are the origins that lead to all changes. Dementors. Are you here to search Sirius? Lu-en closed his eyes quietly. But having a Dementor in the summer is also a good idea. Feeling the growing cold around him, he couldn't help thinking. Over time, the sky outside the window is also getting darker and darker, and the moon and stars cannot be seen, just like a bottomless abyss, giving people a sense of fear that follows. Tick. The rain lightly knocked on the window and splashed a small splash of water. It's starting to rain outside. Inside the Hogwarts carriage. The dim light dispelled the darkness. Hermione's brown eyes stared blankly at the pitch-dark scenery outside the window and couldn't help but whisper, "What the hell is going on outside?" The little witch had never seen such strange weather. "Here are the Watchers of Azkaban." Lu-en stroked her brown curly hair and replied in a relaxed tone. "The Keeper of Azkaban?" Hermione repeated suspiciously. What she knew most about Azkaban was from the books and the narrative of Sirius, which is located in the middle of the waters of the North Sea, a wizard's cage on an isolated desert island. But for the keeper of the cage, it was obvious that she had not heard Sirius mention it or seen it in a book. Nobody wants to mention 13 of them by name, not even Sirius. Lewin seemed to see Hermione's doubts and explained. Those watchers called Dementors, their main food is human happiness, and those who are sucked out of happiness are left with only fear and pain. I came here this time. It is estimated that there was an order from Fudge to search for little Sirius Dash. Before Lewin could finish speaking, the train made a loud noise. Immediately afterwards, the lights in the car went out, and the surrounding space became pitch black, and nothing could be seen. Fluorescent flashes. Hermione took out her wand and cast a small spell. Under the glittering light, the carriage lit up again. "What's the matter? The train has stopped." Hermione looked out the window, but did not see the familiar castle. The train had not arrived yet. Why did it suddenly stop? "The Dementors are coming." Lewin glanced out the window and could already see many figures dragging rags like ghosts. They were hollow and shapeless, and their bodies were wrapped in black cloth. Click. The window began to freeze, and even the black tea near the window gradually froze, exuding a biting chill. The surrounding temperature dropped suddenly. A shadow appeared on the frosted glass. It was a face like a carrion. The long pale hand pressed lightly on the glass, printing a slightly visible handprint. "Are these the keepers of Azkaban?" Hermione stared at the figure outside the window. Her body stiffened. An indescribable fear surged from the bottom of her heart, and her brown eyes were absent-minded, as if her soul would be sucked away if she saw it. "Don't look at it." Lewin put his hand lightly over Hermione's eyes, then picked up the shining wand and hung it upside down in midair with a levitation spell to illuminate it. Dementor carrion-like faces have no vision. They only find their targets through emotion and happiness. In just a short while, the Dementor lying on the glass left, leaving only a frozen window. "Call." Miss Hermione let go of her eyes and let out a soft sigh. She just glanced at the monster, and she felt a lot of sad memories in her mind. "Is this the power of Dementors? Are they gone?" the little witch asked Lewin softly. "No, they're in the train now." Lewin shook his head, then pointed to the door of the carriage with his finger. One after another tall and floating figures passed by the train aisle, as if they were looking for something. Headmaster Dumbledore actually let them on the train? Hermione leaned against Lewin's arms and whispered in disbelief. Although there was the light of a wand in the carriage, it was not enough to make the little witch feel at ease. Only Lewin by her side can give her some warmth. Not necessarily what Headmaster Dumbledore meant. It could be Fudge .99. Lewin looked at the Dementors passing by the door and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. The icy cold air permeated the entire Hogwarts train, and all the wizards dared not make a sound, for fear that they would attract these blind, soul-sucking demons. The rain outside the window is getting louder and louder, and the moon sky is not visible due to dark clouds. Creak. There was a soft sound from the carriages of the pulley, and a long hand that was dry and rotting like a branch came in through the crack of the door. The next moment, the door of the carriage made a creaking sound, which was very harsh in the silent space. "Want to come in and investigate?" Lewin and Hermione switched positions, letting the scared little witch lean against the window. And behind him, Miss Granger couldn't help pulling on the corner of his shirt. As the door was fully opened, a Dementor wearing a tattered cloak slowly floated in. That face without facial features, like it was fished out of water, was slowly approaching Lewin 720. "It feels, those delightful delicacies." Dementors are still a kind of magical creatures after all, and they can't control their strong desires at all. Putting the arrests out of his mind, it now just wants a good meal. Lewin couldn't help frowning when he saw the Dementor that was approaching gradually. He could feel the memory of being alone in the past few years involuntarily appearing in his mind. And this feeling is getting stronger. "Lewin!" Hermione exclaimed, pointing the gleaming wand at the Dementor. "Divine might." Before Miss Hermione could make a move, Lewin opened his scarlet eyes first. A vortex twisted in midair, and the Dementor was sucked in before he could react. Ordinary magic spells are useless against Dementors, only escorts can do it. However, Luen did not learn this powerful defensive spell. And they themselves are not visual, so the control of the kaleidoscope cannot be cast. In the end, there was only one divine power left. Luen used his wand to close the compartment door again as the Dementor was sucked into the divine space. These organisms have research value. After sucking the eyeless Dementor into the Kamui space, Luen closed the sliding door of the carriage. In the corridor, Dementors wandered one after another, like the soul-sucking death god in the Dark Knight, and the cold air poured into the carriage through the crack of the door. Luen put his Slytherin robe over Hermione and cast a temperature-stabilizing spell with his wand. After stabilizing the temperature, he looked out the window. At present, the train has completely stopped, and it is estimated that it will not arrive at Hogwarts until about 11 o'clock. Those Dementors really dared to rush into the train under Fudge's orders. Thinking of this, Luen thought of the one he put in the Shui space again. Just use it to practice the Spirit Guard. At this moment, a burst of pure white light suddenly erupted in the corridor, very dazzling and very gentle, and the darkness brought by the Dementors disappeared. That is, Hermione's eyes widened at the light outside. This soft, pure white light dispelled at least half of the fear in her heart. What spell is this? Call God Guard. Luen listened to the high-pitched howls outside and probably guessed who used this high-level defense spell. Remus John Lupin, the new professor of defense of dark magic. Boom! As several Dementors flew out fiercely, a middle-aged wizard with a shining white light appeared in the corridor. The wizard had gray hair and was wearing a shabby robe full of patches. His face also looked haggard and tired, as if he hadn't slept for a few days. Because last night was a full moon night? Luen couldn't help but guess. Like these wizards infected by werewolves, they will uncontrollably turn into hairless werewolves on a full moon night, and they usually lose their minds and attack anyone. Under Luen's somewhat suspicious gaze, Lupin pulled open the sliding door of the carriage they were in. When Hermione saw Professor Lupin long ago, she leaned against the window in Slytherin's robe. After all, in front of outsiders, the little witch is still a little shy. Accompanied by a creak, a hurried and tired voice sounded. I just saw a Dementor walk into your car. Are you two okay? It turned out. I was worried about the two of them, so I came to see. Don't worry. Professor Lupin, we have nothing to do here. 39. Luen looked at the worried Professor Lupin and shook his head with a chuckle. Although he is a werewolf, he is still the professor of dark magic defense this semester. But people look good, not like Quirrell and Lockhart. How do you know me? Lupin was stunned. He remembered that he hadn't mentioned his name and occupation. Because I just saw your name in your carriage. Hermione, who was leaning against the window, said softly. And it's marked in the Hogwarts Professor Directory. You teach defense of dark magic. 5. After listening to the little witch's words, Lupin was slightly surprised. Are these two little wizards so meticulous in their ability to observe? Well, I didn't expect this. Slytherin's little witch. Lupin shrugged when he saw the green-bottomed robe on the other side. No, I'm not Slytherin. She shook her head in retort. Although I would love to be in the same academy with Luen, it is a pity that Miss Hermione is not. Then Hermione returned the green robe to Luen, who was still wearing a shirt, revealing the scarlet robe inside. I'm from Gryffindor. Luen is the wizard of Slytherin. Luen took the robe and put it on his body, smiled friendly at Lupin, and said hello. Gryffindor? Lupin froze for a moment. Gryffindor and Slytherin, a little couple? Thinking of this, he looked a little weird. This is really strange. Forget it, you two stay in the car. Well, I'll go to the captain to ask about the situation. Shaking his head, Lupin put those complicated emotions behind him and then reminded the two wizards. The most urgent task now is to make this train move quickly, and it is obvious that the guards of Azkaban have given instructions. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to come out casually. Are you here to catch Sirius? After closing the door, Lupin couldn't help thinking as he looked at the deep and dark corridor. Perhaps Lupin's professorship was of some use. The lights were quickly restored in the train, and the Dementors all left. Looking at the gradually recovering temperature around her, the girl took down the wand that was still hanging upside down. I feel that Professor Lupin and Lockhart are different. Thinking of the soft light, Hermione subconsciously held Lockhart for comparison. No way, after all, Lockhart left a deep impression. Every day read according to the book and occasionally teach some useless little magic spells. He's just a big deal. And she had heard from Luen that Lockhart had been promoted to captain of the Auror organization. Seriously, if it wasn't for the Daily Prophet's report, she would hardly believe what Luen said. How on earth did Lockhart become captain and also the Auror organization? During that time, the little witch frowned and thought about it. That hand-calling guard just now is really good. It seems that this semester is not so boring. Luen nodded in agreement. The sound of rain outside the window gradually subsided. It may be that the group of ghosts that sucked the soul left here, and the dark clouds in the sky also dissipated a lot. By the way, where did you get that Dementor just now? Remembering the vortex just now, Hermione looked at Luen curiously. In my storage room. Luen thought about it and said, Shui's space is unbreakable, unless it has another god kaleidoscope, but obviously this is impossible. But keeping it in it all the time is not the way, after all. He has to store all kinds of things. Looks like it's time to make a cage. Looking at the ornate castle silhouetted in the distance, Luen thought. The originally dark sky outside the window has now revealed the bright moonlight. Through the glass, Luen saw the gorgeous castle reflected under the stars at a glance. After a night of twists and turns, Hogwarts finally arrived. With the loud roar of the train, it quickly stopped. It was still raining outside, so Luen turned his wand into an umbrella in advance and then took Hermione's little hand and got off the train. After standing on the flagstone floor, Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. No way. He was attacked by a Dementor on the train, and most of the people were panicked, and even a few young wizards who had just entered school were scared and cried. On the other side, Lupin was helping the dizzy Harry down, followed by Ronald, who was worried. Has Harry been attacked by a Dementor? Luen walked over with an umbrella and asked softly. Looking at Harry, who was covering his head with an unsightly expression, he probably already thought of the reason. Harry had just been sucked by a Dementor, but his color was much better after eating a piece of chocolate. 720. Ronald, who was standing on the side, quickly explained. When he thought of those creatures with pale skin and rotting faces, he couldn't help shaking his body. It seems that the fear of those Dementors has deepened for Ronald. Lupin, who was supporting Harry, looked at the little blonde wizard from Slytherin, who remembered his name. Didn't expect him to be so familiar with Harry and the Weasleys. He wouldn't be too surprised if he just fell in love with Gryffindor's little witch. But he actually knew so many lion cubs, and he seemed to have a good relationship, which was puzzling. When will Slytherin and Gryffindor mix? When he mentioned this, he couldn't help but think of the slug. Severus Snape. Back then, these little lions were incompatible with the snakes in the quagmire. I don't know how it is now. Hey, Potter, is it true that you were given an affectionate kiss by a Dementor? At this time, Malfoy in Slytherin robes and his two servants came over, and there was a hint of sarcasm on his face. What, is this frightened? Seeing Harry lowered his head and didn't answer, Malfoy leaned closer and smiled sarcastically. But where he couldn't see, Harry gritted his teeth. Malfoy, you wait for me. Malfoy, don't go too far. Ronald gritted his teeth and squeezed his fist, wanting to punch the slapped face. Well, it's still the same as it used to be. Looking at Slytherin and Gryffindor, who were about to fight, Lupin breathed a sigh of relief. He really couldn't imagine that the two academies would coexist peacefully. But Lupin frowned as he looked at the two who had drawn out their wands. Dementors are no joke. Not to mention that laughing at classmates is not a polite thing. Hearing this, Luen's mouth twitched. Back then, the campus abuser would actually say such a thing, and he didn't know how Snape would feel when he heard it. Who are you? Malfoy frowned at the gaunt man with his wand. His patched, tattered robe was even more conspicuous. This is Professor Lupin, the new professor of defense of dark magic. 9. Luen introduced it to his close friend. Gerald. Malfoy was taken aback. Why is he here too? Probably thinking about Harry all the time, so he didn't pay attention, to Lou-En, who was silent on the side. Good evening, Gerald. Malfoy put away his wand, then turned and glared at Ronald. Today, for Gerald's sake, I'll let you go. No, you don't have to look at. Before Lou-En could finish speaking, he saw that Malfoy and the others had already left. Thanks to Malfoy running fast, or I'll have to give him a taste of the slug. Ronald raised the new wand in his hand and said disdainfully, Puff. After hearing the slug, Miss Granger, who was holding Lou-En's hand, couldn't help laughing. She remembered the last wand accident again. Ronald had been throwing up slugs all day. Miss Jackie, what are you laughing at? Ronald said with a blushing face. It's nothing. I just think of funny things. Hermione shrugged and chuckled. She didn't want to fight Ronald. If you have that time, you might as well learn something from Lou-En. Professor Lupin, let's go first. Lou-En glanced at the first-year wizards who had already boarded the ship and said with a chuckle, the dinner party will start soon. After saying goodbye to Lupin and Harry, Lou-En and the others came to the place where Thestral was pulling the carriage. Hermione, like last year, looked curiously at the empty carriage. Can I touch them? Miss Hermione asked curiously. You can try it. Lou-En took her little hand and pressed it against Thestral's wings. Hard bones and thin wings like a bat. Hermione's eyes widened. She didn't expect that she could touch this magical creature representing unknown. From Lou-En's point of view, the Thestral that was being touched tilted his head and glanced at them, but he didn't act too radically. Look smart and sensible. After all, these Thestrals were raised by Hagrid, and they were trained naturally. Come on, it's time for us to get in the car. After Hermione touched it, Lou-En lifted the curtain that was covering it. However, what surprised him was that there was actually a little blonde witch inside. His long golden hair reached his waist, strange ornaments hung from his ears, and a pair of gray eyes were staring at Lou-En in a trance. Good evening, Miss Luna. Lou-En greeted with a smile. Hermione, who was behind her, also walked in when she heard the title and saw Luna holding the Quibbler at a glance. It's just that the magazine is the other way around. Good evening, Mr. Gerald. Well, and Miss Granger. An ethereal voice like a lark resounded in the carriage. Good evening, Miss Luna. Hermione also opened the curtain and sat in. She looked curiously at Luna, who was sitting across from reading a magazine with a pair of brown eyes. It was the latest release of the Quibbler, and she also had a weird magazine like this in her hand. But what makes the little witch a little strange is that the magazine in Luna's hand is held upside down, and she herself reads it with relish. It was only after entering the carriage that he realized that there was only this blonde little witch in one of Nuoda's carriages. Looks lonely. Do you mind if we sit here? 35. Lou-En asked with a smile. Of course not, Gerald, Mr. Lou-En. Luna put down the magazine in her hand and replied with an ethereal voice. Her expression always seemed to be in a trance, as if she was born. Doesn't your magazine affect your reading? Hermione couldn't help but pointed to the magazine she was holding back and asked softly. It's impossible to read an upside-down book. No, it doesn't matter. Hearing this, Luna glanced at the magazine in her hand, then shook her head and replied. She was used to reading books like this a long time ago. Yes. Hearing this answer, Hermione nodded slightly and didn't ask any further. After all, everyone has different preferences. Maybe Luna just likes to read like this. However, if I remember correctly, she could see the Thestrals outside. Hermione had heard Lou-En tell the story of the little Ravenclaw, witch on the lawn before, and couldn't help feeling a little sympathetic. Thinking of Thestrals, Miss Granger couldn't help but turn her head to look at the empty head of the carriage. There was a Thestral who was in charge of pulling the cart standing in that open space. Although he couldn't see it, with the help of Lou-En, Hermione also touched it with his hand. Unlike ordinary horses, they have a gentle temperament and do not resist the friendly touch of a little wizard. Can you see those Thestrals outside too? Luna noticed Hermione's gaze, watching the black Thestral outside the car pulling the car, which made her a little curious. Unexpectedly, besides Gerald, there are people who can see the existence of Thestral just like her. I haven't been exposed to death, so I can't see them. Hermione shook her head under her curious gaze. But I just touched the Thestrals, and their wings feel like bats. 99. Thinking of the feeling of stroking Thestrals, she whispered. Then you were lucky. 35. Luna looked at her with some gray eyes and said in a voice like a lark, Are you lucky? Hermione looked at Luen, who was leaning beside him, and at Luna, who was stunned outside the car. Both of them can see the messenger representing death. Only she can't see it. Yeah, it was a lucky thing to not see Thestrals. Miss Hermione remembered the introduction to this magical creature in the book. Only those who have witnessed death can see them. Luna is because of her mother, and Luen is because of witnessing other people's deaths. It's not a good thing to see Thestrals, Miss Beaver. 35. Luen, who was sitting next to the girl, touched her brown curly hair with his hand and said in a soft tone. At this moment, the carriage began to move, and the creaking wheels walked across the muddy and wet ground, leaving 2 deep marks. The Thestral slowly pulled the carriage from the dense path to the Hogwarts Hall. Every year, Professor McGonagall finds young wizards who have just entered the school and spends a lot of time teaching them some common rules and precepts. So those of them who set off late in the carriage are not afraid of being late. Inside the car, Luen opened the door and looked at the stars emerging in the sky. It was not as dark as he saw on the train. He subconsciously remembered those Dementors. The weather at that time was very dark. Harassing horsefly, Luna said suddenly. Her voice was soft and ethereal. Harassing flies? Hermione looked at Luna, who was looking at her with a puzzled expression. She seemed to have some impressions of what this called some kind of magical creature. This seems to be Luna's own fantasy, right? Granger still vividly remembers the chat when they first met on the Hogwarts train. Although I can't see it, I can feel some harassing flies buzzing in your ears. Seeking flowers 0. Luna's tone was full of affirmation, as if they really existed. Hermione touched his ear subconsciously, but there was nothing. And when Luen looked at the little witch who was sitting in a trance across from him, he suddenly thought of something. Miss Luna, are you sure that harassing horseflies exist? This sentence immediately attracted the eyes of the 2 little witches. Of course, Mr. Luen. Luna said softly. Although I don't know why there are no harassing horseflies around you, I am sure of their existence. 35. Luna didn't feel those annoying buzzing noises from the always smiling and polite blonde wizard. 0. It was strange because it was the first time she had seen it. As if there were no worries. Why do you think they exist when you can't see them? Luen removed the compass from his wrist and used the enchanted ring on his finger to bring it back to its original size. Let this compass tell you the answer. With that said, he threw the compass to Luna, who was a little dazed. This compass? Luna took the somewhat old compass and looked at Luen with some doubts. Before she could ask, she heard his explanation. It's a compass that can point to whatever you have in mind, and it's very precious. After all, it was his own frog cub who got it back for him under the pursuit of Captain Jack. Also, Luen wondered if the harassing horsefly, a fantasy creature, even existed. A compass pointing to what I have in mind? Luna opened the octagonal compass suspiciously, and the fixed pointer inside began to rotate rapidly, and it was looking for the target the holder needed. Okay, then you just need to think in your mind where the harassing horsefly is. The corners of Luen's mouth twitched as he spoke softly. The needle was spinning for a long time, but eventually it stopped and slowly pointed towards the sluggish Miss Hermione. Even Luen was taken aback by the result. Do harassment flies really exist? 1. Are there really harassing flies in this world? Even Luen was slightly taken aback when he saw the pointer of the compass. Instead, Luna's eyes lit up, and there was a smile on her dazed expression. She said happily, Look, they really exist. Is this compass fake? Hermione looked at the pointer pointing to her and glanced suspiciously at Luen beside her. How could there be such a magical compass in this world? Even if there are props to let people go back to the past, why can't a compass to find a target appear? 99. Luen said with a chuckle. If he remembered correctly, in the Department of Mysteries at the Ministry of Magic there was a pocket watch for changing the time. Go back in time? 35. Hermione opened her eyes wide and muttered to herself 723 incredulously. Can magic even do such a thing? No surprise, there are so many things in this world that you don't know, Miss Know-It-All. 35. Luann couldn't help joking, looking at the little witch. Knowing everything. Hermione narrowed her eyes subconsciously, and the little tiger teeth couldn't help biting. I really want to give him a bite. And Luna, who was sitting opposite, was holding a compass. Her face was thoughtful. She didn't know what to think. At this moment, the needle on the compass began to rotate slowly. The sound of the compass turning was so clear in the carriage that Luann and Hermione couldn't help but look sideways. Did Luna switch targets again? Luann thought while looking at the frantically spinning hands. This time, the pointer rotation time is a little long, so long that it is very likely that Luna will not find the target. Are you looking for some fantasy creature again? Hermione looked at Luna, who was looking down at the compass, and asked with some doubts. No, it's not. Luna sighed slightly as she looked at the frantically spinning pointer. Sure enough, the dead can be restored. Before she could finish thinking, she saw the pointer suddenly stop. Seeing the aspect of the pointer, several people present were stunned. Because it's pointing in the direction Luann is. Perhaps what you are looking for is in my position. After all, the compass's search scope is the whole world. Luann looked at the pointer pointing to his position and explained. He even switched places with Hermione as he spoke. Look at the pointer. Before Luann's words were finished, he saw that the pointer pointed to him again. After Luna saw the compass, a pair of silver-gray eyes stared at Luann subconsciously. What goal did you just have in your mind? Hermione opened her brown eyes, looked at the little witch of Ravenclaw in front of her, and asked a question subconsciously. Why does the compass point to Luann? What would you like to do with my Luann? I was thinking. Luna's thoughts were a little confused, and her mouth was a little vague. But it was her appearance that made Hermione feel a sense of vigilance. With this look, Luna wouldn't want to snatch Luann with her. Thinking of this, Miss Granger froze. Creak one by one. With a soft sound, the swaying carriage finally stopped. Going to the auditorium of Hogwarts, there are already many little wizards around, talking and laughing about the topic, which looks very lively. While those first-year freshmen are still floating on the Black Lake in small boats, this year's guide is still the familiar Hagrid. Goodbye. After Luna got out of the carriage, she returned the compass to Luann under Hermione's complicated gaze. Then, holding the Quibbler magazine, he ran into the auditorium with his head down. She just wants to be quiet now. You say? What does she want in her heart? Hermione looked at Luann with the compass and asked softly. Luann opened the compass, and the needle inside slowly pointed to Hermione. I just know what I want in my heart. Looking at the compass that Luann handed over, Hermione tilted her head and glanced at him. A smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Then she stretched out her little hand and picked up this magical compass, and the pointer pointed to her little boyfriend without a doubt. Me too. Luann looked at the compass in the little witch's hand, smiled, and pinched the tip of her nose. My only treasure in this world is probably the girl in front of me. After making the compass smaller and strapping it back to his wrist, Luann and Hermione's little hands were interlocked, just like they were on a date. However, at this moment, a familiar voice came from behind. Hey Luann, here and here. When he turned around, he saw Fred and George jumping out of the carriage, and Ginny, the little witch who had become a second grader. Long time no see, 3. Luann looked at the 3 redheads who came over and greeted them with a smile. You didn't come to visit us on vacation. After getting close, Fred complained. During the holidays, the 2 brothers wrote a lot of letters to Luann, on the one hand to communicate about the production of Werewolf, and on the other hand to invite him to the Burrow as a guest. However, Luann had been busy in Knockturn Alley at the time, so he didn't go. Sorry, it's been a bit busy this holiday. Luann shrugged, but I'll definitely be there next holiday. 35. Because if nothing else happened next vacation, he was going to open a shop with the 2 brothers in Diagon Alley or Hogsmeade Village. After all, after buying a potion shop in Diagon Alley, he doesn't have much Jean Gallion now. Real? 0.1 George's tone was suspicious. Real. Lu-en nodded helplessly. Next holiday, I think we should officially open the store. By the way, how's the werewolf killing of the two of you? Thinking of the werewolf killing last semester, he asked suspiciously. It's almost there, but let's go to the auditorium to chat. It will close in a while. Fry interrupted the conversation. There weren't many little wizards around, and the freshmen were about to row. Okay, auditorium chat. 99. Lu-en nodded, then led Hermione into the auditorium with a few people. Bright candles light up the ornate auditorium. The long tables of the 4 academies were filled with wizards. After passing through the patterned door, several people walked into the auditorium of Hogwarts and walked towards the long table of Gryffindor. Due to the late arrival, the 4 long academy tables were filled with wizards. So only sit at the end of the long table. The long tables of Slytherin and Gryffindor are next to each other, and Lu-en is wearing a green base robe, which is not too conspicuous. The professors sitting in the front hadn't come yet. Professor McGonagall was in charge of guiding the freshmen. The new Professor Lupin should be with Harry and the others. To Hermione's surprise, Hagrid was actually in the professor's long table, and he was sitting next to the well-dressed Professor Flitwick. The body like a giant is very conspicuous in the ranks of professors. Lu-en saw it too. Hagrid is going to be a professor too? He also had some doubts. Because the Hogwarts notice didn't say Hagrid's position, not even his name. Wouldn't it be to teach us to protect magical animals? After all, Hagrid's research on magical animals can be said to be the most familiar in Hogwarts. And Professor Kettleburn, who protects fantastic beasts, isn't here, you probably guessed it. George glanced at the professor above and guessed it in an instant. After all, they had taken Professor Kettleburn's class. Hagrid will be our fantastic beasts professor this semester? Hermione asked with wide eyes. For Hagrid's knowledge, Miss Granger still agrees very much. Because she once got a manual of records of magical animals from Hagrid, the content of which is very comprehensive, it can be said that it is simple and easy to understand, without any technical terms. Several people tonight. At this time, Harry and Ronald also entered the auditorium. And Professor Lupin, who was with them, also walked to the professor's position with a worn-out leather case. He's our dark magic defense professor. 35. Ronald introduced his 2 brothers and sisters. Professor Lupin is not like Lockhart. He even drove the Dementors back on the train and saved Harry's life. Harry bowed his head in embarrassment. He and Ronald were attacked at the same time, but he was the only one who fainted in the end. Shoo, the sorting ceremony is about to begin. 9. Miss Hermione reminded. I saw Professor McGonagall walked quickly to the center of the auditorium, where a wooden chair was placed, and on the chair was lying a worn-looking wizard's pointed hat. The most anticipated sorting ceremony of each semester officially began when the first curious little wizard stepped forward and put on the sorting hat. This year, there may be a lot of new little wizards, so the sorting ceremony didn't end until about half an hour later. As the last freshman was assigned to Hufflepuff, with the warm applause of the little Badgers, the dinner was about to officially begin. Clang! As the silver fork struck the silver cup, everyone turned to Headmaster Dumbledore, ready to listen to his speech this time. First of all, welcome everyone to a new school year at Hogwarts. Before the rich dinner is about to begin, I have 2 more words to say. The first is Professor Lupin. He has accepted the position of Professor of Defense of Dark Magic, which means that he will teach you next school year. Good luck, Professor Lupin. Dumbledore smiled. Hearing that Harry and Ronald looked at each other with a smile, it was finally a reliable dark magic defense professor. If it's still like Lockhart, they can't imagine how they're going to spend this semester. Professor Lupin also stood up with a smile, bowed and greeted the little wizards. But Lu-en clearly noticed it, and Snape, who was sitting next to him, tilted his head and showed a sarcastic smile. Seeing the expression of his dean, Lu-en narrowed his eyes. An idea popped into his mind. Thinking about it, he turned his head to look at Harry, who was looking very happy. If it does, it will be fun. The corners of Lu-en's mouth couldn't hold back the curved arc. I guess Harry wants maternal love too. Okay, there is another news. Professor Kettleburn of the Fantastic Creatures Conservation Course has retired due to a limb defect. But luckily, Rubeus Hagrid will take his place in the future. As Dumbledore's voice fell, there was warm applause in the auditorium. Although most of the little wizards thought it was incredible, they still applauded him. Professor McGonagall, who was sitting next to Hagrid, clapped and poked Hagrid, who was still a little dazed, with his elbow. Hello everyone. 35. Hagrid stood up hastily, his huge body nearly overturning the table. Professor Flitwick, who was eating, was also taken aback. It sure is Hagrid. Miss Hermione smiled with the corners of her lips raised. Hagrid actually became a professor? 723. Lee widened his eyes and exclaimed. When Luan and the others were discussing just now, Harry didn't come, so he didn't know about Hagrid. No way, I heard that Professor Kettleburn's leg was bitten off by a fire dragon, so I had to retire. Fred, who has the grapevine, said. Finally, at the request of the Ministry of Magic. Headmaster Dumbledore squeezed his palm, keeping the voices in the auditorium as quiet as possible. There is also disturbing news that Hogwarts in recent days will welcome a group of guests from Azkaban, the Dementors. 35. Until Sirius Black is caught. I'm sure you've all seen them on trains. Although the Ministry of Magic has guaranteed that they won't hurt anyone, try not to provoke them. Also, please take care of your own safety. After this sentence was finished, the auditorium fell silent. Harry clutched his head even more, remembering the painful memories and the screaming of the woman. Okay, the dinner officially starts now. I wish you a happy meal. As the last paragraph fell, the rich and delicious food appeared on the table one after another. The third school year's dinner has officially started. After a sumptuous dinner, under the leadership of the prefects of each grade, the new wizards all returned to their dormitories. And Luan followed Malfoy back to the bedroom in Slytherin. Well, familiar shades. Looking at the green water window, Luan lay directly on the soft bed that had been made. After Malfoy and Crabbe packed their luggage, they left the bedroom and ran into the hall to chat. In the silent bedroom, Luan threw aside the earphone in his hand and closed his eyes for a while. He and Hermione's suitcases haven't been taken out of the Camui space yet because there's still a wandering Dementor inside. I don't know if other abilities can hurt it except for the Guardian of the Gods. Thinking of this, Luan was going to go in and try it out. Anyway, a Dementor that can attack mentally can't be as powerful as his kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope should hold up. As his body slowly inhaled into the vortex in midair, his figure disappeared into the bedroom. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in a dark space with many irregular squares. This is the interior of the Shaway space. There are also some plants, luggage, daily necessities, and some strange things brought back from other worlds by the frog cubs on those irregular boxes. And a Dementor looking for a way out in midair. Saw you. After Luan put his light blue eyes on it, the Dementor reacted quickly, with a corrupt face without facial features, staring at the sudden appearance of the outsider. It tastes delicious emotional flavors. That's the breath of joy. In the next instant, the Dementor who was floating slowly in the air quickly approached Luan's direction. He looked at the flying figure and slowly extended a hand. Let's see if lightning has any effect on it. Thinking of this, with the surge of magic power, the golden thunder and lightning roared in the palm of the hand, and the originally pitch-black space was instantly illuminated. Woo 135. A hissing sound came from the face without facial features. It seemed to be very afraid of golden thunder and lightning, and hurriedly stepped back. The Dementor slowly floated in midair, looking at the food discharge below, and did not choose to continue to retreat or move forward. Are you afraid of lightning? Luan looked at the golden arc in his hand with some surprise, and a powerful and turbulent magic was surging inside. It turned out to be fear of this magic power. He found the reason. The magic power inherited from the Thunder Dragonslayer crystal is not comparable to that of ordinary wizards. Interesting. The corners of Luan's mouth raised, the magic within his body burst out instantly, and brilliant golden thunder appeared in the surrounding space. It was like a cage that completely controlled the Dementors. Can you understand what I'm saying? He looked up at the Dementor who had gradually become flustered and asked. It is impossible for such a group of creatures to survive by relying on human happiness to be easily controlled by the Ministry of Magic, but if they can hear and understand the words of wizards, it will be different. Wisdom and non-wisdom have different meanings. It's just a pity that after hearing his words, the Dementor did not give any response. It is now dodging the thunder and lightning running in the air in a panic. Seeing the scene, Lewin couldn't help shaking his head. I don't know how the Ministry of Magic communicated with them. Looks like I'll have to ask Lockhart about it when I have time. #Sue. Lewin looked at the Dementor in midair, picked up the wand around his waist, and aimed it at it. Transfiguration spell. 35. With a dazzling white light from the tip of the staff, the panicked Dementor turned into a solid black statue. The golden thunder light turned into a cage tightly covering it. In the Shui space, there are many herbs and precious potions, and if it is allowed to wander in it, it may damage how many things. After doing all this, Lewin turned around and went back to the bedroom. Malfoy and his henchmen have not returned yet, and they are probably still outside chatting with the group of pure-blooded wizards about their dreams. Putting the headphones in his ears and listening to the rhythmic music, Lewin lay down on the bed and went to sleep. The second day of school day. The sun was shining brightly on every corner of Hogwarts, and the early morning mist was beginning to dissipate in the golden sun. When Lewin woke up, it was only about 7 in the morning. Malfoy and Crabbe were still sound asleep in bed, not knowing when they got back last night. He tidied his clothes, put on Slytherin's custom robes, placed his wand in the Camui space, and was ready to head to the Great Hall for dinner. Walking on the long steps of the slate, the surrounding sides are full of emerald green grass, which looks full of vitality. The shadows of the surrounding trees swayed, and the reddish leaves fell on the ground to form a carpet. Professor Snape, good morning. When he arrived at the entrance of the auditorium, a figure in a black robe appeared in his sight. It was Snape who had finished his breakfast. I didn't expect Snape to actually eat in the auditorium. This is really rare. Lewin greeted politely. Well, Geralt. Snape squinted at the blonde wizard who had grown much taller in front of him, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Recently, the potion has achieved good results. Come to my Jiao office when you have time. 35. From the first time he saw Lewin until now, he knew that he was not wrong. All the talents of this little wizard are surprisingly good, except for the magic history class. After complimenting Lewin, Snape hurriedly left his brother. Are you free to go to the office? Lewin looked at the leaving figure, the corners of his mouth gradually raised. After the auditorium. At a glance, he saw the petite figure with brown curly hair in front of Gryffindor's dining table, and there was a pile of books in front of her. These are all elective and compulsory courses. Waking up so early to work hard? Hearing the familiar tone behind her, Hermione turned her head with a smile. This semester, I must win you. Looking at the books on a table, Lewin picked up a few books by her side, flipped through them, and glanced at them. The knowledge in it is almost all he has learned by himself in the last semester, so the content of these semesters is not difficult for him. But, with so many subjects, have you taken all the courses as electives? Lewin had a guess in his mind. Although the elective courses were selected in advance last semester, Miss Hermione at that time did not show him the elective list. Do you have so much time to study if you choose all of them? Aren't you the same? Hermione glanced at him, tilted her little head and said. She ticked according to Lewin's elective list, mainly to be with him for a longer time. 66/99. Hearing his little girlfriend's answer, Lewin shook his head with a smile. You must know that many of these courses are conflicting. For example, if you take Hagrid's Conservation of Magical Creatures class, you can't take the Runeven class. He chose all of them purely because he had studied these knowledge and was confident that he would get an excellent score in the final exam of the last semester. And there's a time turner. Thinking of the time changer that can go back to the past, Lewin couldn't help but narrow his eyes. As long as there was a class conflict, he might be able to apply for one from Headmaster Dumbledore. If I remember correctly, Hermione once got a time turner with the help of Professor McGonagall. As an excellent alchemist, he is naturally interested in this alchemy product that can affect time, and he does not know what the principle of operation is. If you can penetrate it, you will be one step closer to grasping the mystery of time. A honey muffin, would you like it? Hermione put the book beside the table and asked Luan a question while ordering a breakfast. Well, here's one. Luan, who had come to his senses, nodded. One more cup of black tea, by the way. 99. He has no desire at all for chocolate milk in his heart now. Maybe it's a habit of drinking tea. It could also be that Miss Hermione was beside her and subconsciously didn't order one. Today is the first day of school, and the two of them do not have any courses because the timetable for this school, period, has not been handed out. On the first day of school, you two got up too early, didn't you? Halfway through Luan's meal, Harry and the others came over, yawning, looking sleepy. Why are there so many books? Ronald looked at the books on the desktop and blinked in surprise. He also held a sleeping pet mouse in his arms. Peter Pettigrew. Luan looked at the mouse, which he hadn't seen for a long time, with a thoughtful expression. It seems that I have time to settle things on Sirius Black's side. Didn't you two choose electives? Hermione asked with a frown. Electives? Harry and Ronald looked at each other, not knowing what to say for a moment. There are not so many books for elective courses, right? This is your book? Harry asked cautiously. No, it's all Miss Granger's alone. Luan shook his head and replied. All alone? How many courses did you take? Ronald couldn't help exclaiming. At this moment, a piece of parchment floated from midair and was slowly distributed in front of every little wizard. Each day's lessons are clearly recorded on it, which is a unique timetable from third-grade students. The timetable is here. Harry picked up his timetable and glanced at it. Most of the above content is blank, except for some necessary courses. His elective courses are all selected according to the minimum. It made him feel satisfied. Ronald and Harry next to him have exactly the same timetable. After all, they were chosen together. On the opposite side of Luan and Hermione, the two of them have the same timetable, but compared to the blank, they are full. There are even several conflicting courses in it, listed in the same place. Like tomorrow morning's divination class and Muggle studies class, the two of them are destined to choose only one class. You took all the classes. Harry glanced curiously. The content above made him stunned for a while, and he shouted in disbelief. Above the dense courses, watching him dizzy. Compared with them, his blankness seems to be a satire from scumbags. Some of the courses above are conflicting. How do you resolve them? And a course like Muggle Studies, you two don't have to take it. 5. Harry's little head really couldn't imagine the thinking of a scholar. These two are just too scary. Well, there's another letter. At this time, Miss Hermione also discovered a letter that had been brought to the table with the parchment scroll. The signature of Professor McGonagall is written in elegant cursive lettering. It was sent by Professor McGonagall. Hermione said to Luan with some doubts. What did Professor McGonagall send them letters at this time? Luan probably guessed it. If nothing else, the timetables for the two of them were known to Professor McGonagall and told to Dumbledore. Next, then, is the time turner from the Ministry of Magic. You can only get that thing, and then Luan has another research goal. As the envelope was opened, the contents above were presented in front of the little witch's eyes. Professor McGonagall asked the two of us to visit her office. There was only such a short sentence on a piece of white paper. Let's go then. After Luan ate the rest of the muffins, he said goodbye to the two who were still in shock. The two of them are a perfect match. Looking at the back of the young couple leaving, Harry couldn't help muttering something. Is this the scholar couple? Hearing Harry's words, Ronald nodded in agreement. Compared to these two, the two of them are just trash. Walk out of the Hogwarts Great Hall and head towards the main building. Inside Professor McGonagall's office. Bang bang. With a knock on the door, Professor McGonagall's slightly hoarse voice sounded from inside. Come in. 39. Before Hermione could push it open, the door opened automatically. The mottled shadow of the window shone on the desk in the bright sunlight. Professor McGonagall, the Dean of Gryffindor, was sitting at the desk, writing something with a quill in his hand. Seeing the two little wizards coming in, Professor McGonagall put down the quill in his hand and looked up at them. Lou and Gerald, a talented little wizard from Slytherin, even Professor Flitwick wants to drag him to Ravenclaw. That's what Flitwick said when he was partying at the Three Broomsticks that day. Although he's a Slytherin, Professor McGonagall doesn't mean too much. After all, Lou sits at the table of Gryffindor every day to eat, and also walks very close to Harry, Fred, and the others. He doesn't look like an arrogant and conceited little snake at all. And her most satisfying little lion, Hermione Granger. She is also a diligent little witch. Only, I saw the course selection form for the two of you. You filled out all the courses, didn't you? Professor McGonagall pulled out 2 sheets of paper from the neatly organized files on the side, marked with the content of their course selection. There is a tick at the back of each course, and a sheet of paper is full. That's right, Professor. We just want to take some more courses to supplement our knowledge. Before Lewin could speak, Miss Hermione nodded quickly in response. Supplementary knowledge? Professor McGonagall couldn't help shaking his head as he looked at the brown eyes that looked directly at her. Supplementary knowledge is not so supplementary. You must know that the courses they have chosen are conflicting with each other, let alone study. I am afraid that they may not pass the final exam. You have to know that there are conflicting courses like this. You can only choose one to take the class. It will make you feel tired rather than knowledge expansion. A person's energy is limited, Miss Granger. There was a hint of helplessness in Professor McGonagall's eyes. Although she looks like such a studious little witch, she also appreciates it very much. But if you try too hard. But Professor McGonagall, it doesn't say you can't take all the courses. Point 35. Luen said softly. And I believe that time will always make up for that knowledge. Point 39. It's just a matter of spending more time. After speaking, Lewin looked at Professor McGonagall standing in the golden sunlight with pale blue eyes. He is now waiting for the older cat lady in front of him to tell the alchemy tool. Yes, that's right, time always makes up for it. After being silent for a while, Professor McGonagall answered slowly. Her slender fingers slowly crossed on the table, and a pair of old but spirited eyes looked at these 2 young lovers who were pursuing knowledge. Seriously, in all her years at Hogwarts, she had never seen anyone so thirsty for knowledge. Looking at the 2 people in front of him, Professor McGonagall, after thinking for a while, took out a string of golden chains from the drawer below the desk. At the end of the chain was a transparent hourglass that could be turned, and there was an azure blue inside. Grit. It is the best expression of time. Actually, I have been hesitating whether I should give you 2 of this thing. Professor McGonagall said softly. She looked at the hourglass that she had applied for from the Ministry of Magic, and her expression was still a little hesitant. The risk of using this thing is high. If it is not used properly, a life will be lost for no reason. After all, time is the most difficult thing to grasp in this world, and it is also the lifelong pursuit of wizards who study time. This hourglass. Seeing what was in Professor McGonagall's hand, Luen subconsciously came up with a name. Time Converter. What is this, Professor? Hermione opened her eyes wide and asked suspiciously. For flowers. Time Changer, it can make people go back to the past, Miss Granger. Professor McGonagall picked up the hourglass in his hand and put it in the air. The bright sunlight reflected a reflection on the ground through the hourglass. This is what I have requested from the Department of Mysteries at the Ministry of Magic, for both of you, and, of course, Headmaster Dumbledore. Can make people go back in time? Hermione couldn't help exclaiming when she heard the explanation. Afterwards, she seemed to have remembered something, and hurriedly turned to look at Luen beside her. The little witch clearly remembered that he once talked about this kind of prop in the carriage. Luen's expression was also a little surprised. Although he knew it was one thing, seeing it with his own eyes was another. Of course, it's just that this time changer can only let you go back 5 hours. When it came to the usage requirements, Professor McGonagall's face gradually became serious, and she didn't want the 2 little wizards she was most satisfied with because of this. Face death. If it's more than 5 hours, then the time won't be stable. Don't try that because someone has tried it before. The witch aged several decades in an instant and died at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and injuries. She was only 20 years old at the time. Hearing this example, Hermione couldn't help but glance at the hourglass pendant floating in midair. How terrifying. But don't worry, if you only control it to 5 hours, this kind of thing won't happen. 5. Seeing that the example he gave seemed to frighten the little witch, Professor McGonagall said with a smile. Then now, this time Turner will be handed over to Mr. Geralt for safekeeping. After speaking, Professor McGonagall used the floating charm to send the time converter to Lewin's hands. Please remember, don't play with time. Otherwise, it is you who will be played with by time in the end. I'll take that to heart, Professor McGonagall. Lewin held the hourglass pendant in his hand and responded with a chuckle. Okay, now the time converter you have applied for has been handed over to you. Since you can only apply for one, you two can use it together. Professor McGonagall looked at the two with a smile and said involuntarily, After all, the two of you are studying together every day, so be careful not to get yourself too tired. After speaking, Professor McGonagall sat back at the back of the desk and picked up the ink-stained quill to continue the unfinished writing. After pushing open the carved wooden door, Lou-Anne and Hermione walked out of the office. Is this a time converter that allows people to go back in time? As soon as he walked out of the office, Lou-Anne took out the hourglass pendant from his pocket, stared at the hourglass left and right with a pair of eyes curiously, but in the end he didn't see any difference in 723. There is no depiction of any inscriptions, and you can't feel any magic surging, just like an ordinary decoration. Lou-Anne even thought it was a fake if it hadn't been given to him by Professor McGonagall himself. With this, the two of us will have enough time to go to class. Miss Granger, who was also curious, leaned over and chuckled. Great pursuit. Lou-Anne laughed a little dumbly, and he involuntarily pinched the tip of Miss Beaver's nose. He got this time converter mainly because he wanted to study it through his own alchemy. Might be able to make a copy. It's just that on the surface, there are no runes on this hourglass pendant, and I don't know how to control time. It seems that the Department of Mysteries at the Ministry of Magic is also not to be underestimated. Even the time aspect is involved. The Ministry of Magic was a lot deeper than he had imagined, and he wondered if Lockhart would be able to quickly climb to a high position in recent years. If not, maybe you can help him. Thinking of this, Lou-Anne couldn't help but think of Peter Pettigrew. This is a good prey. The recipient of the Merlin Medal, a dead hero, turned out to be a traitor and turned into a rat. This is something that can stir up the entire British magic world. Don't pinch my nose. 33. After breaking free of Lewin's fingers, Hermione rubbed the tip of her little red nose and gave him a shy look with her mouth open. This be asterisk 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 D knows how to pinch the tip of her nose every day. After coming out of Professor McGonagall, Lou-Anne glanced at the blue sky and didn't know where to go for a while. The weather is nice today. Why don't you go to the Quidditch pitch to watch Harry and the others practice? On the first day of the new term, Harry and his twin brothers were dragged by Wood to practice Quidditch. Get ready to continue suppressing Slytherin this year. I want to go to the observatory to see it. Hermione wasn't interested in Quidditch. She wanted to go somewhere and traveled. For example, near the Forbidden Forest, there is an abandoned high tower. I heard that it was used by Hogwarts professors to observe the starry sky for divination, but it is now abandoned. Okay. 35. Anyway, Lou-Anne wasn't interested in Quidditch either, so he just listened to the little witch's advice. Near the Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts. The little witch with brown curly hair bounced on the moss-covered stone steps, and the low ponytail and gray pleated skirt tied behind her also swayed, and her snow-white shirt stood out against the emerald-green background. Lou-Anne followed behind her, holding a red-bottomed Gryffindor robe that belonged to Miss Hermione in front. Although it's summer now, the weather hasn't gotten too hot. Tall pine needles stand deep in the forest, and crimson leaves spread across the ground like a colorful carpet. Lou-Anne could also see birds with dark blue feathers flying in the woods. By the way, we're going to have a divination class tomorrow. Miss Granger, who was walking quickly in front, slowly turned around to look at Lou-Anne. Her pace was still receding. I know that fortune-telling is taught by Professor Sybil Trelawney. Lou-Anne nodded, and he also had some impressions of this professor who taught divination. If I remember correctly, the opponent's divination ability is sometimes good and sometimes bad. I always feel that divination is so difficult to learn. Hermione couldn't help complaining when she remembered studying with Lewin over the holidays. Except for alchemy and divination, she can get the best grades in several other subjects now. Divination requires talent, and even I have a hard time learning it, Lewin said with a shrug. He has also studied divination, but until now he can only understand some simple prophecies, and he is still not on time. Unfortunately, he has no talent for this. Isn't Professor Trelawney great? Hermione couldn't help asking. Trelawney? If it's great, it's really great. But in normal times, she is like an old witch who cheats and eats and drinks. He still heard this sentence from Fred and the others. I heard that Dumbledore has raised her for decades. Maybe it's quite good. Lewin said softly, the corners of his mouth raised. If it wasn't great, it wouldn't have been raised by Dumbledore for so many years. Yes! Hermione heard the sarcasm in Lewin's tone. It seems that this professor is really not very good. In front of it is the dilapidated 0.1 tower. Lewin looked at the grassy slope with a spire in the distance and said softly, astronomy is also the main course this semester. Under his teaching every night, Miss Granger has become familiar with the outlines and positions of all the stars and their meanings. Although not interested in divination, Hermione was happy to learn about the stars in the sky. Perhaps you can use the constellations for divination. Lewin happens to know where there are professional professors in this field. Centaur in the depths of the Forbidden Forest, each of them is a master of divination who observes the sky at night. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't like divination. Hermione looked at the abandoned tower and whispered, my pleasure. Lewin chuckled and pulled up her little hand. There is a divination class at 9 in the morning and a Muggle Studies and Lunarian class in the afternoon. 99. Hermione looked at the schedule for the new semester in her hand and turned to Lewin, who was drinking tea. Looks like we're going to be busy this afternoon. So are you two going to drop the Muggle Studies course or the Runavan course? Harry, who was sitting opposite, couldn't help asking. Looking at the relaxed expressions of these two people, it doesn't look like they are anxious at all. Why give up? Hermione asked him back with a small smile. With the time converter, they have enough time to study, and they don't have to worry about which course they want to take. That's 5 hours more than someone else's 24 hours. Thinking of this, Hermione touched the golden chain hanging on her white neck, and a circulating hourglass was lying quietly on her underwear. The time turner was originally 13 in Lewin's hands. However, considering that he still had a horse charm hanging on his chest, Lewin gave it to Miss Hermione for safekeeping. It's the same no matter who you put it on. Would you like to go to the room of requirement tonight? Lewin leaned over and asked softly in her ear. Hearing the room of requirement, Miss Hermione's eyes lit up and she nodded hurriedly. I will go with you. She was more used to being with Lewin in the room of requirement than in Gryffindor's bedroom. After all, she didn't know the people in the dormitory well, even if it had been 3 years. The two of them really didn't panic. Looking at the young couple chatting and laughing, Harry turned to Ronald and shrugged. Now that he has taken 2 courses, he feels that time has become more and more urgent. Harry couldn't even imagine how these two would spend the rest of the semester. Is this the world of a scholar? So horrible. The divination classroom is not in the main building of Hogwarts, but in the North Tower. Lewin and Hermione have been here for 3 years, and this is the first time they've been to the North Tower. Thank you, fat lady. Hermione smiled at the portrait of the fat lady at the door of Gryffindor. Okay, you two get out of here. Naughty little couple. The fat lady waved her hand in disgust. However, the two of them didn't care. They followed the direction given by the fat lady and headed towards the stairs of the North Tower. Since the door was not closed last time, Mrs. Fat seems to have completely remembered the two of them. Although she was a little disgusted, she still chose to tell the 2 little wizards the direction to the North Tower. Following the winding stairs that changed positions from time to time, Lewin finally found the stairs leading to the North Tower. Harry and Ronald, who were following the two of them, were about to faint. There is only one divination classroom in the classrooms in the North Tower, and there is also an office. All belong to Professor Trelawney. The fortune-telling classroom is a small classroom with dozens of round tables arranged in an irregular manner, and the windows are slightly blocked with curtains, making it look a bit dark. There are various bottles and jars in it, the most conspicuous of which are some crystal balls. These things are the basic props needed for divination. As soon as he stepped into the classroom, Lu-En saw the woman with thick lenses hidden in the corner. Sybil Trelawney. However, apart from him, Ronald didn't find it, and it was the story that sat on a seat at a round table. The divination professor hasn't come yet? Harry looked around suspiciously, but did not find the professor's figure. You know they were just a few minutes late. No, she's already here, right in the corner. 35. Following Lewin's gaze, Hermione found it too. She pointed her finger at the corner and said softly, "Nice to meet you in the material world." When the crowd was almost there, the woman slowly walked out of the corner of the shadow. It shocked many little wizards who didn't find her existence. "I'm your divination professor, Sybil Patricia Trelawney." 55. Trelawney wears round glasses with thick lenses, various decorations hanging on his body, wearing a robe that looks a little messy. His long pale blonde hair looks like an afro, and he is covered with a headscarf. Covered. Her eyes looked very nervous, as if nervous. "Is she really our professor?" Ronald said suspiciously. He was taken aback just now. "Redhead, oh, I saw something unknown on you. Remember to be careful lately." Trelawney glanced at Ronald, who questioned her, and opened his mouth to give him a prophecy. Many little wizards dare not speak out for this kind of babbling prophecy. After all, being a professor at Hogwarts is definitely capable. Lewin looked at this crazy old witch and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He really didn't see any difference in Trelawney. As if 723 is a magic stick pretending to be a ghost. Why do I feel like she's an imposter? Hermione thought, then said, like Lockhart, 9. I feel the same as you. Lu-En nodded in agreement. This class is destined to not be boring because Trelawney has begun to make a prophecy to many little wizards. For example, Neville will smash a cup, and the next moment, under the tension, a cup really shatters in his hand. This made the people present panicked, for fear of being the next target. "Miss, I feel that your fate is a bit strange." At this moment Trelawney suddenly stopped in front of Hermione. She scrutinized the cute little witch with her chin. "It seems like your fate has changed. I've never seen you like this." Her tone was different from the chattering at the beginning, but a little low and serious. "What fate?" Miss Hermione asked nervously. Well, romance and a bright future," Trelawney whispered. "But your fate didn't belong to this." "But your original destiny was not like this." Trelawney's deep voice echoed in the silent classroom. Her eyes lost madness and her expression no longer looked strange. Hermione had not had time to be happy when she heard this. The original fate? The little witch looked at the serious-looking Professor Trelawney in a daze, and she asked suspiciously, "Then what was my original fate?" Although he wasn't interested in divination, these words caught Hermione's curiosity involuntarily. And Lu-En, who was sitting by the side drinking tea, stared at the witch in the green robe with a pair of light blue eyes. "Something. Can you even see something like fate?" It seems he underestimated Trelawney's strength. "No, how do I know your original fate?" Trelawney shook his head, the chain hanging from him making a crisp sound. She just felt it suddenly. This kind of prophecy will appear from time to time, and those prophetic images will soon dissipate. It was like an epiphany. Okay, let's talk about the divination content." Trelawney clapped her hands under Hermione's stunned gaze and shouted to the little wizards around. "Can this kind of professor really teach people? Why do I feel like she's talking nonsense?" Hermione lowered her head and said softly to Lu-En. Especially in the scene when he just walked into the classroom, he pretended to be a ghost to a group of little wizards and almost made Neville cry. Divination is like that. Lu-En nodded in response. After all, no one can guarantee that their divination is accurate, so it seems that there will be some confusion. But Trelawney's bloodline still has some abilities, especially the prophecies made by Miss Granger. Destiny has been changed. Isn't that referring to his arrival? Dumbledore hadn't raised her for decades. There are some things you must know before teaching this class. Trelawney's thick-lensed eyes glanced around. Neville and Lavender Brown, a Gryffindor girl, looked away in fear, not daring to meet her. Because just now, Trelawney made a prediction to Lavender that the rabbit she raised would die on October 16th. Lavender's rabbits look healthy, and I don't think Ronald's mice are necessarily dying if Ronald's mice are dead. Hermione propped her chin a little bored and said, "She and Lavender are in the same dormitory. Last night, she also saw the cute little rabbit who looked very lively and did not have any disease. How could it be said that he would die if he died? He must be pretending to be a ghost. It's impossible to say that." Lewin picked up a huge crystal ball and placed it on the table, and some pictures gradually emerged on it. It was a dead rabbit. But the date is on the night of October 15th. It seems that my talent is still good. Lewin couldn't help thinking. Divination class needs talent, innate talent. This kind of mysterious thing is not something that ordinary people can learn. If you are responsible, you will gain nothing in my class. Trelawney pushed his eyes and said, half-squinted. Her tone was no longer serious, but returned to the way it was at the beginning, which sounded out of tune. She's just like you said. Hermione couldn't help but kicked Lewin, who was still observing the crystal, with her little foot. She remembered that her little boyfriend often said this. Divination depends on talent. Lewin felt the movement under the table and reached out to hold the calf that was swaying again. Soft, smooth. It was a hot day, so Miss Granger wore only a knee-length pleated skirt and a white shirt. When Lewin grasped her fair calf, Hermione's ears instantly turned red. Let go. There were many people in the classroom, and everyone was listening intently to Trelawney on the stage explaining the mysteries and usage of divination, so Hermione didn't dare to use too loud a voice. Don't let it go. Lewin responded with a chuckle. At this time, the basics of Trelawney have been explained. The next thing to do is to start the first divination prediction. Lewin has tried many times in the potion shop, but only one or two has really been successful. The efficiency is simply ridiculously low. As the patterned teacups were placed on the table, Trelawney's figure shuttled around the classroom, and the voice sounded at the same time. Now, all you have to do is to open the prophecy in the book and follow the steps inside to make the teacup prophecy. 5. 2 in a group and watch each other. As the words fell, the little wizards went to find their little friends. Lewin and Hermione did not move. It was just the two of them at the table near the corner. Does this really work? Hermione touched her hot face, looked at the steaming teacup, and asked softly. Just when the teacup was handed out, Lewin loosened her calf. Otherwise, I will be caught and tickled now. Thinking of this, she gritted her teeth. This revenge must be returned tonight. Some of Trelawney's words, you can treat her as nonsense, but this teacup prophecy is true. Lewin picked up the teacup and blew the heat, then took a slow sip. Hurry up and drink it, we'll have to exchange it later. Seeing Lewin sipping his tea slowly, Hermione poked his finger on his cheek and said. Her tea had leftover residue, and she was just the last step to check the prediction result. What's the hurry? The tea is hot. Lewin seemed unhurried. The taste of these teas is surprisingly good. It seems that Trelawney is also a person who knows how to enjoy. You're lying again. Hermione rolled his eyes at him. The temperature of the tea is just right. How can it be so hot? If you don't believe me, you can try it. Lewin chuckled and handed the tea to Miss Hermione. As soon as she took a sip, she stuck out her little tongue. So hot? It's hot. After taking a sip of Lewin's hot tea, Hermione couldn't help sticking out her little tongue. It's too hot. It warmed up a little. Lewin chuckled and took out the wand hidden in his sleeve, and there was still a glittering light on it. The tea just now was cast a heating spell. Damn. 35. Seeing the wand still shimmering, Hermione also understood that the tea had already been used by Lewin. Just wait, sooner or later I'll be back. Thinking like this, Miss Hermione remembered the bottle of pink love potion again. The smell of parchment and Lewin's body seemed to tug at her heartstrings all the time, and even after a long time passed, it still reverberated in her mind. But, looking at the steaming tea, Hermione took out her wand after thinking about it and pointed it at the teacup lightly. Cool quickly. As the light flashed by, Luen, who was sitting across from her, could feel a chill. On the teacup, some small crystal ice grains have appeared, and it looks like it has been taken out of the refrigerator. 727, here you are, dear Mr. Granger, and be careful of the heat. Hermione winked mischievously, then returned the teacup. Looking at the frosted teacup, the corners of Luen's mouth twitched. The cold air replaced the boiling heat. Hot tea also becomes cold tea. But in the hot season of summer, it is still very good. After drinking, Hermione picked up his teacup and looked at Poke the Fog and See the Future, looking for a corresponding explanation. The same is true for the other little wizards, who look at each other's tea leaves in groups of 2 to make predictions. Luen also picked up Hermione's teacup, and the tea leaves left in it couldn't tell what shape it was. Judging the prophecy based on the shape of the leaves of the tea leaves may sound a little weird to muggles, even for Luen's first divination. If this kind of prophecy succeeds 3 times out of 10, it is not bad. What prophecy did you see in my teacup? Curious Miss Granger turned her head and asked. I don't have enough talent, and I can't see it either. Luen flipped through a few pages of the book, and there were no corresponding shapes for comparison. Me too. Hermione also brought over his teacup, and the tea leaves spilled and it didn't form a proper shape at all. It seems that the 2 of them do not have an innate talent for divination. Oh my God, you're unknown. At this time, Trelawney made a sharp exclamation, attracting everyone's attention. Luen also raised his head suspiciously. I saw Trelawney holding a white teacup, looking at the shape inside in horror, and in front of her stood a panic-stricken Harry. Professor Trelawney, is there something wrong with the shape of my tea leaves? Harry asked quickly. This gentleman with a scar on his forehead, you will be betrayed recently. Your friend will leave you, and face death and approval alone. Trelawney held the teacup in trembling hands, panic in his tone. Am I going to be betrayed? Harry's eyes widened, looking at the crazy witch in front of him in disbelief. Approaching him, he turned his head and glanced again. Ronald, who was also sluggish beside him, and Luen and Hermione behind him. There weren't many people in Harry's school, and these 3 were the only ones who came close to him. Harry, don't be nervous. Maybe her prediction was a mistake. Dab. Ronald comforted after recovering. However, this sentence completely irritated Trelawney. She hated most when someone said her divination wasn't working, even if it really wasn't. Redhead, give me your teacup. Trelawney sneered and took the teacup from Ronald's hand. Equally a bad sign. Pay more attention to your friends, and be careful that people who like you are taken away by others. 35. Saying that, she slapped the teacup heavily on the table, leaving Ronald, who was stunned, holding the mouse. What do you mean, I'm going to be green? But who will like me? Ronald thought in confusion. The 2 of them are too miserable, aren't they? Hermione said in a sympathetic tone. If the prophecy is true, then these 2 are really troubled brothers. Have you noticed anything? Luen played with the girl's brown curly hair and asked softly in her ear. Hermione's petite body froze at the heat of her exhalation, and her face flushed red. Hermione hurriedly pushed Luen, who was leaning on her shoulder, looking at the chuckling boy angrily. What did you find? The cups in Ronald and Harry's hands were exchanged. Although it was pushed away, it was worth seeing the shy little witch. You mean, the prophecies of the 2 of them are opposite? Hermione's eyes lit up and she guessed right away. That's right. Luen looked at the 2 Harry in front of him and nodded. Ronald is the one who will be betrayed by his friends, and Harry is the girl who likes him is taken away by his friends. A girl who likes Harry is not. Hermione and Luen looked at each other, and a name came to mind subconsciously. Ginny Weasley. Luen said the name they both guessed together. If the predictions are accurate, does it mean that Ginny is going to be looking for Harry's friend as her boyfriend recently? If Trelawney's prediction is correct. Luen responded. The prophecy has been solved, but now there is one left. Ronald will be betrayed by a friend, and this friend will face death and approval. Miss Granger said softly to herself, frowning. She had no idea at all about this prophecy. In the face of death and approval, the high probability refers to prisons and courts. Looking at Hermione thinking hard, Luen had an answer in his heart. Ronald's friend, isn't it Peter Pettigrew? Professor Trelawney has been making various predictions to the little wizards throughout the divination class, especially Harry and Ronald. This led to the two people holding the book just after class, looking downcast. It can be seen that Trelawney's nonsense has a great influence on them. Harry listlessly looked at the two lovers who were holding the book, chatting and laughing, and hesitantly called out, what? Lou-Anne, who was teasing Hermione, heard the call and turned to look at Harry questioningly. You say, is Professor Trelawney's prophecy accurate? Harry hesitated for a moment, then asked softly. After all, among the four, Lou-Anne was the most knowledgeable, and even Miss Know-It-All couldn't compare. He must know about these divinations or something. Predicting this kind of thing requires talent, and no one can tell. Lou-Anne explained to Harry and Ronald, after all, no one will believe that picking up a teacup and shaking it twice and looking at the shape of the tea leaves can predict the shape of the tea inside, out the future. For something like divination, he has no talent for it. And Lou-Anne thought about the teacups of these two people and didn't know if he should tell them. And what? Hearing the words halfway through, Harry's curiosity was immediately attracted. Even Ronald, who was still thinking about whether he was green, came over. And didn't you find out that you both have each other's cups? Hermione sighed helplessly and reminded the two little lions. Why are these two people so stupid? The opponents? Harry and Ronald were stunned on the stairs. The two of them looked at each other and finally had some impressions in their minds. It seems that the teacup holding this is indeed the other party's. That is, I will not be betrayed? Harry thought of this, and finally a look appeared on his listless face. Wait, but Ronald's prediction? Will the girl who likes me be taken away by my friends? Ronald and Harry's thoughts came together. He looked a little complicated for a while. Since it is a good thing not to be green, but my friends will betray him and face death and judgment? It seems that it is still replaced, and there is no difference. Ugh. Two helpless sighs sounded on the empty stairs. By the time the two of them came to their senses, Lou-Anne and Hermione had already descended the stairs. Wait for us. The stairs kept moving, and the figures of the two were getting farther and farther away from Lou-Anne. The afternoon course was a double course for them, a Muggle Studies course and a Runic course, which could not be taken together. That said, it's time to use the time converter. Which class do you want to take in the afternoon? Touching her brown curly hair, the scent of jasmine was very pleasant. Lou-Anne asked Hermione, who squinted like a kitten. Well, rune lessons. Hermione replied. Runewin is another name for rune, which is generally a rune carved on alchemy tools. Hermione used to study with Lou-Anne for 2 months during the vacation, so it is relatively familiar. Row. Lou-Anne nodded. For him, it doesn't matter which course he takes first. The Ancient Rune Study course is a must-learn basis for alchemy, and Harry and the others basically took this course. On the contrary, there are basically not many candidates for Muggle research courses. Most of the wizards have recently come from the Muggle world, and there are not many pureblood wizards who are interested in Muggles. Walking into the spacious and clean classroom, the first Ancient Rune lesson officially began. The professor of this class is a young witch, Bithsheda Babrin. Her youthful appearance looked like she had just graduated from Hogwarts. Runovan's course basics Lou-Anne had already mastered it through self-study during the vacation, so most of the knowledge he explained made him a little bored. On the contrary, Miss Granger, who was not interested in alchemy at the beginning, listened very enthusiastically, holding a quill pen in her hand to record continuously, as if she was taking a class on the history of magic. I have to say, seriously, Miss Hermione looked really charming. At least in this class, Lou-Anne kept his head up and stared at the little witch who was listening to the class in a daze. During the period, Professor Babrin, who was in charge of teaching the Lunovan course, also frowned and called Lou-Anne up and asked some difficult knowledge. Seeking Flowers 0. What surprised her was that the blonde little wizard actually answered all of them, and the answer was particularly profound. You know, some of the esoteric words even she can't understand. Perfect answer, Mr. Gerald. Professor Babrin gave him a look of admiration. Then the Gryffindor gets 10 points. Gryffindor? Lou-Anne was stunned for a moment, then remembered that he was only wearing a white shirt today, not a robe. But Miss Hermione beside her was wearing Gryffindor's red-bottomed robes. Mr. Gerald of Gryffindor. Hermione couldn't help laughing, teasing her little boyfriend next to her. Professor Barberin, I'm from Slytherin. Lewin squeezed Miss Hermione's little hand, and then said helplessly to Babrin, You're from Slytherin. Babrin looked at Lewin, who was sitting in the middle of a group of little lions in disbelief, and then turned to look at another part of the classroom. There are all green-robed wizards of Slytherin. Yes, that's right. Gerald is our Slytherin. 35. Malfoy shouted from the crowd. He is quite willing to testify to himself about the extra points, not to mention that he has a good relationship with Lewin, and he doesn't look down on this betrayal like other pureblood wizards. Malfoy is my best friend. Lewin thought with a smile as he looked at Malfoy, who spoke up for him. Not surprisingly, none of the wizards from Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff competed for Lewin alone in this class. It can be said that Slytherin crushed the audience. Those questions are too simple. Walking out the door, Lewin said lightly, I will too. Hermione muttered. It's just that her thinking is not as fast as Lewin's, so she didn't grab it. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but grab Lewin's tie and pulled him over with a little force. Then he put the necklace of the time changer hanging on his chest around the necks of the two. It's time for us to go to Muggle classes. After walking out of the classroom, Hermione took out the time converter on her chest. Since there was only one, the two of them had to wear them together. Come on, we're going to a Muggle studies course. 3. Saying that, she pulled Lewin directly over and put the golden chain around his neck. Due to the small range of the chain, the two of them were almost face to face, and they could even hear each other's breathing and heartbeats. It's the scent of jasmine. Lewin gently kissed her cheek and said with a chuckle, Do you not like it? Hermione blinked her beautiful eyes, raised her head, and asked with a small smile. To maintain the scent, she uses the same shampoo every day. No, I like it. Lewin's pet 727 fondly patted her little head and then turned the hourglass of the time converter 3 times in a row. As the hourglass gradually began to turn, he could clearly feel that the time around him had begun to regress rapidly. The space became gradually blurred, and a sense of dizziness came from his mind. Everything in front of them disappeared in their eyes, as if the whole person was outside the world. However, this feeling only lasted for about half a minute, and soon, his feet touched the ground made of slate, and all the surrounding buildings began to stabilize. Hermione looked around curiously. It was still in a corner of the 8th floor, but the sunlight coming through the window had changed a bit. It had already reached the dusk of evening, and it was as bright as noon at this time, which proved that they had returned to 3 hours ago. What an amazing prop! 39. Hermione couldn't help but sigh. Props that can affect time are truly magical. Lewin couldn't help thinking of those props in the world of Doraemon. The same is to affect time, but one is magic and the other is science. I don't know when the frog cub will come back, and I haven't sent a photo back recently. Thinking of the frog cub who had been away from home for nearly a month and a half, Lewin missed a little. After all, I have been raised for 11 years, and I haven't even seen the shadow a few times since I entered school. Every time I come back for a day or two, or hibernate for a period of time, I go directly to travel. Ah, that's us. Just when Lewin was thinking about his frog cub, Hermione pulled his sleeve and whispered in his ear. Lewin looked up and saw himself and the other Hermione walking up the stairs with Harry and the others. Hurry up, let's hide first. Hermione remembered Professor Mike's warning to them and quickly pulled Lewin to hide in a dark corner. Watching himself and the other Hermione leave, Lewin felt a little amused. Now at the same time, I have myself and another self, and I don't know what will happen if the two meet. However, it is better not to be provocative in terms of time. He also can't guarantee that something unexpected will happen. Looks like we came early. It should be the end of the divination class now. 55. Lewin looked at Ronald and Harry, who were stunned on the stairs, and immediately knew the time. At this point in time, they should be heading to the auditorium to prepare for lunch, about an hour before the next class. Let's go to the Muggle class and wait in advance. Lewin said and pulled Hermione towards the stairs leading to the second floor. Muggle studies classrooms are not very big. There were only 2 people who came early, so we found a seat near the corner. It's convenient to fish during class, only for Lewin, of course. Miss Hermione doesn't do anything like fishing. No matter what class she is in, she will try her best to pick up the brush and record all the useful knowledge. As time passed slowly, some little wizards gradually came to the classroom. Most of them wear azure and yellow robes, the sorcerers of Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff. As for Slytherin, Lewin has never seen one. Gryffindor is also less crowded. Unbelievable, Slytherin didn't come alone? Hermione noticed this too. She couldn't help pulling Lewin's sleeve and said, "I am not." Lewin said with a shrug. Fortunately, he wasn't wearing Slytherin's robes today, otherwise he would have been the most conspicuous one in the classroom. As the bell rang for the class, a Professor Carity Bubaji, wearing a black robe with a kind smile, pushed the door and walked in. She glanced at the little wizard sitting in the classroom with soft eyes, and a gentle voice sounded. "I'm your professor of Muggle Studies, Carity Bubaji. This term, I'll be teaching you how to build relationships and live peacefully with Muggles." Speaking of which, Professor Bubaji's tone became a little more serious. "Remember, we are not much different from Muggles. Of course, and those werewolves." Professor Bubagi said it well. After listening to the kind professor's first class again, Hermione knew she had picked the right class. "Indeed, I also think she's right." Lewin nodded in agreement. Compared to the wizarding world, where bloodline civil wars take place at every turn, the technology of Muggles outside can be described as rapid development. Such as 0.1 aircraft, tanks, etc., these have completely exceeded the imagination of pure-blood wizards. Not to mention there are more powerful area damage weapons. Miss Hermione seems to enjoy the class. 35. Lewin chuckled. In this class, Hermione answered questions very actively and scored about 10 points for Gryffindor. After leaving the classroom, the time also came to evening. Now it's time to go to the auditorium for dinner. Inside the Hogwarts Great Hall. "Good night, my friend. Would you like to have a tense and exciting werewolf kill?" Fred asked enthusiastically when he saw the young couple coming over. The werewolf kill by their twins is ready.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.